Good morning and welcome to today's New York City Council hearing for the Committees on Women and Gender Equity, joint with General Welfare. At this time, we ask that you please silence all cell phones and electronic devices to minimize disruptions throughout the hearing. If you wish to testify, please see a Sergeant at Arms for assistance. At any time throughout today's proceeding, please do not approach the dais. We thank you for your kind cooperation. Chairs, we are ready to begin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Amanda Farias, Chair of the Committee on Women and Gender Equity. I'm excited to be joined by the Chair of the Committee on General Welfare, Councilmember Crystal Hudson, for today's hearing on housing instability among LGBTQ+ individuals in New York City. As we celebrate Pride Month here in New York, it is important to recognize the reality of the LGBT+ community's ongoing struggles. One of them being that in the United States, LGBTQ+ individuals are more likely to face housing insecurity than non-LGBTQ+ people. When we look back at the origins of Pride at the 1969 Stonewall riots, we are reminded that the modern LGBTQ+ liberation movement was largely formed by housing insecure people. The Stonewall Bar was a haven for young LGBTQ+ individuals who had nowhere else to go. Housing injustice and LGBTQ+ rights have been intertwined since the beginning. Today, LGBTQ+ individuals continue to face challenges in accessing safe, stable, and affordable housing. Often this begins tragically early, when many young people are forced to leave their homes due to family rejection or unsupportive environments. Almost half of all homeless youth in New York City identified as LGBTQ+, and 1 in 4 have experienced homelessness or housing insecurity at one point in their lives. But these challenges often persist throughout an LGBTQ+ person's life, with LGBTQ+ elders facing high risks of being turned away from or being charged with higher rents at independent or assisted living centers. As nationwide, 48% of LGBTQ+ seniors experience discrimination when applying for housing. For LGBTQ+ individuals, the challenges don't end when they gain access to shelter services. Many experience discrimination, harassment, and even violence when seeking support. Furthermore, if staff are not equipped to serve LGBTQ+ people, it can often lead to additional harm, especially when staff fails to honor a person's gender identity and houses a person based on their sex assigned at birth rather than where the person feels the safest. New York City has historically been a progressive leader and a safe haven for individuals of all genders and sexual orientations, boasting the largest population of LGBTQ+ people of any U.S. metro area. Our city needs to bolster our support of housing services for LGBTQ+ people and the development of more affordable and supportive housing options for this community. So today we'll ask the administration how you are working to address housing instability among LGBTQ+ individuals in New York City, what specific housing resources are available to the LGBTQ+ community, and what trainings are available for people working in shelters around engagement with LGBT+ individuals. Now I'd like to invite Chair Hudson to deliver her opening remarks.
Thank you so much. Good morning and welcome to today's oversight hearing. I'm Crystal Hudson, General Welfare Committee Chair, and my pronouns are she, her. I would like to also thank Councilmember Farias, who, from my own personal experience as well as my professional experience working with her, puts allyship into action. And I'd like to thank the Committee on Women and Gender Equity for joining the Committee on General Welfare in holding this hearing. Additionally, we are joined by Council members Aviles, Ung, Morano on Zoom, Wilson, and Aldebal. Despite New York City's reputation as a place of inclusion, LGBTQ+ individuals, particularly transgender and gender nonconforming people, LGBTQ+ youth, and LGBTQ+ people of color remain disproportionately impacted by housing insecurity. Many are forced from their homes due to family rejection. Many face barriers to accessing safe and affirming shelters, and many encounter discrimination when seeking permanent affordable housing. Compounded by rising rents, a shortage of affordable housing, and economic inequality that continues to affect our most vulnerable neighbors, the challenges can feel insurmountable. New York City's overall homelessness crisis continues to grow, with tens of thousands of people residing in shelters nightly. Within this broader crisis, LGBTQ+ individuals, particularly transgender people, youth, and people of color, face unique barriers to obtaining and maintaining stable housing. In the LGBTQ+ homeless youth provider survey, providers reported that being forced out by parents or they ran away because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression was a primary reason for homelessness in over 55% of their LGBTQ youth clients and over 67% of their transgender clients, with general family issues underlying homelessness for an additional 16.5% of LGBTQ plus and 7.3% of transgender clients. Among respondents to the most recent U.S. transgender survey, 70% of respondents who experienced homelessness and stayed in a shelter the previous year reported some form of mistreatment, including being harassed, assaulted, or kicked out because of being transgender. More than 36% of respondents who experienced homelessness in the previous year avoided staying in shelter because they feared being mistreated as a transgender person. We recognize that addressing housing instability among LGBTQ plus New Yorkers requires more than awareness. It requires tangible action. As lawmakers and governmental officials, we need to be thoughtfully and intentionally creating policies that not only respond to immediate needs, but also address the systemic inequities that place LGBTQ plus New Yorkers at greater risk of homelessness. We hope that today's hearing will inform an assessment of how we can reduce the barriers that LGBTQ plus people experience when it comes to achieving housing stability and financial sustainability more generally. Thank you for your commitment to this important issue, and I look forward to today's discussion. And I'd like to conclude by thanking the committee staff for their work on this hearing: Aminta Kilawan, Panina Rosenberg, Justin Campos, Fariha Rahman, and Elizabeth Childers Garcia. And I'd also like to thank my staff: Andrew Wright, Elika Ruentan, and Demi Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hudson. I'd like to thank the members of the Women and Gender Equity Committee and the General Welfare Committee who've joined us today. I'd also like to thank committee staff Julia Goldsmith Pinkham, Katie Salina, and Ali Stauffer, as well as my own staff, Dan Curtin and Josephine Karras, for their work on today's hearing. I would like to remind everyone who wishes to testify in person today that you must fill out a witness slip which you can find on the desk of the Sergeant at Arms in the back of the room near the entrance. Please fill out the slip even if you have already registered in advance that you will be testifying in person today. If you wish to testify on any of the legislation, please indicate on the witness slip whether you are here to testify in favor of or in opposition to the legislation. I also want to point out that we will not be voting on any legislation today. To allow as many people as possible to testify, testimony will be limited to 2 minutes per person, whether you're testifying in person or on Zoom. I'm also going to ask my colleagues to limit their questions and comments to 5 minutes. Please note that witnesses who are here in person will testify before those who are signed onto the Zoom webinar. I'm now going to turn it over to the Women and Gender Equity Committee Counsel to administer the oath.
Good morning. In accordance with the rules of the council, I'll administer the affirmation. I will call on you each individually for a response. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before these committees and respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you.
Thank you. As a reminder to all of our witnesses, please state your name prior to your testimony for the record. If anyone here today requires an accessible version of the presentation given today at today's hearing, please email testimony@council.nyc.gov, and we'll turn it over to you folks to begin.
Okay, mic check. All right, can everyone hear me? Great. My name is Taylor Brown. I use she, her pronouns. I serve as the inaugural director of the New York City Mayor's Office of Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, Intersex, and Asexual Affairs. Thank you to the members of the Committee on General Welfare and Committee on Women and Gender Equity for the opportunity to testify on the critical issues of housing instability and homelessness among LGBTQI New Yorkers. I appreciate the City Council's attention to these issues and desire to work towards meaningful solutions. I appreciate the testimony and ongoing partnership with my fellow agencies represented here today and across the administration, as well as the community-based organizations, advocates, and community members working every day to ensure that all New Yorkers have access to safe, affordable, and stable housing and supportive services. Part of the broad mission of the Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs is to address both emerging and systemic barriers that prevent New Yorkers from thriving across all facets of life. We recognize that for every person, access to housing and housing stability are foundational to health, safety, economic opportunity, and overall well-being. We also understand that housing insecurity and homelessness do not impact all populations equally. LGBTQI New Yorkers, particularly transgender, gender nonconforming, and non-binary people, youth populations, older populations, those living with disabilities, and LGBTQI people of color have and continue to experience disparate barriers that place them at increased vulnerability of housing insecurity and homelessness. The seriousness of these issues is reflected in the testimony and data provided by our partner agencies and service providers. Their testimony demonstrates that housing insecurity and homelessness among LGBTQI New Yorkers is not the result of a single factor, but the culmination of a myriad intersecting and entrenched inequities. These inequities have been further exacerbated by current economic, market, and political challenges facing us all. While every person's circumstances are unique, it is well established that educational opportunities, employment opportunities, and access to healthcare are equalizers and key determinants in a person's overall quality of life and ability to lead a stable, meaningful, fulfilled, and independent life. But for most of our history, discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender, sex, gender identity, gender expression, and LGBTQI status was permissible both socially and legally. This discrimination was perpetrated and condoned explicitly and implicitly by individuals, the private sector, and the public sector, including federal, state, and local governments. The consequences of longstanding discrimination are borne out in the multitude of disparities facing LGBTQI New Yorkers today. Longstanding discrimination has resulted in LGBTQI people experiencing disparate rates of poverty, unemployment, and lack of employment opportunities, income inequality, educational limitations, barrier to medically necessary healthcare, social and economic immobility, political and social exclusion, hostility and violence, and criminalization. These issues have compounding and collateral consequences, including direct implication and impacts in the context of housing insecurity and homelessness. The legacy of discrimination that informs contemporary disparities in the areas of housing insecurity, homelessness, and other critical areas of life must also be understood in the context of the current economic and political climates. Across our city, state, and nation, most people are waking up every day to ever declining economic conditions and forecasts not seen in decades. At a societal level, we are collectively experiencing surging affordability crises across the spectrum of life, increased levels of indebtedness, stagnant wages and employment opportunities, the inability to save money, and longstanding issues in the housing market that further drive disparities in housing insecurity and homelessness for LGBTQI New Yorkers and other minority communities. These longstanding market issues include a lack of housing supply in both rental and ownership markets, skyrocketing rental costs, affordable housing deficits, lending barriers and cost, barriers to home ownership, unfair private sector housing and real estate practices, and lack of meaningful governmental solutions and intervention over decades to address systemic issues. Concurrently, the Trump administration has weaponized almost every part of the federal government to attack and roll back the progress we have made in establishing LGBTQI legal equality and government-driven intervention models in redressing systemic discrimination and its collateral consequences. These macroeconomic conditions and federal political hostility compound and exacerbate the underlying causes of and disparities in housing insecurity and homelessness facing LGBTQI New Yorkers, as well as other minority and marginalized communities. Against this backdrop, the Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs, housed within the New York City Mayor's Office of Equity and Racial Justice and within the portfolio of the New York City Deputy Mayor for Economic Justice, has already begun its broad strategic thinking and planning to develop meaningful solutions to combat these specific disparities and other priority issues holistically through interagency leadership, partnership, and coordination, and through innovative governmental solutions grounded in law, policy, humanity, and the lived experiences and realities of LGBTQI New Yorkers. Over the course of its inaugural year, the Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs will take a phased and analytical approach to ensure that we meaningfully understand and prioritize all major issues facing LGBTQI New Yorkers, with a focus on quality of life issues and baseline needs, including in the broad context of housing and subcontexts like housing insecurity and homelessness. The Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs will work to ensure that all New York City agencies are in compliance with non-discrimination law and protections, and that they are utilizing best policies and practices to meet the needs of and their obligations to LGBTQI New Yorkers. The Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs will ensure that at the executive level, across agencies and across government, we are delivering bold and innovative solutions and meaningful interventions to redress and eliminate disparities and further needed progress. Finally, the Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs will work to ensure that we are a community-based and driven governmental office that provides meaningful leadership and responsive governance to the communities we serve. Some of our current plans to implement this work include agency-wide regulatory and policy audits to examine current policies and practices, assess what has been successful and where improvements can be made, and to work collaboratively towards better solutions and innovations to ensure that agencies are serving LGBTQI New Yorkers and addressing their unique needs. Agency-wide programmatic evaluations to understand what city agencies have historically done and what they are currently doing in order to supplement, improve, and develop innovative governmental interventions through programmatic and funding models grounded again in law, policy, data, community partnership, and centrally the shared goal of materially improving the lives of LGBTQI New Yorkers. substantive issue-based stakeholder convenings with our agency partners, inter and intra-governmental partners, experts, advocates, and community-based organizations, as well as community members, to ensure that the work of the Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs is collaborative, holistic, responsive, and centered on the needs of the communities we serve. And finally, executive level strategy, coordination, and innovation geared towards bold solutions and government interventions to eliminate the myriad of disparities facing LGBTQIA New Yorkers. This includes combating, documenting federal hostility and the direct harms caused to LGBTQIA New Yorkers, addressing historic and contemporary data and research needs and gaps that inform and drive our initiatives and goals, and assessing and addressing governmental inefficiencies, policies, and practices that impact governmental operations and services. For example, communications, contracting, funding, and other operational elements to ensure that we are delivering better, more equitable, and more responsible services and models of governance. The nexus of factors driving housing insecurity and homelessness disparities for LGBTQI New Yorkers are entrenched, intersectional, and complex, but they are not insurmountable. As the work of the Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs is developed and implemented, we want to assure committee members and City Council that we bring considerable substantive expertise and experience, true vision and leadership, an unwavering dedication to the communities we serve in this city, and a deep commitment to transformational government and cross-government collaboration, cooperation, and innovation to ensure that we are meeting the moment and establishing a lasting foundation for a more equitable, affordable, and accessible city for all. Shared responsibilities and lasting solutions require us to address these interconnected challenges together. The Mamdani administration, the Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs, and our agency partners stand by as ready and proactive partners. We look forward to new and continued partnership and collaboration with City Council on the issues before the committee today and those in the future. Because LGBTQI New Yorkers, like all New Yorkers, deserve the opportunity to live and thrive with safety, dignity, and stability. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'll welcome the committee's questions.
Good morning. My name is Erin Dalton, and I serve as the Commissioner for New York City Department of Social Services, and my pronouns are she and her. I would like to thank Chair Hudson, Chair Farias, and the members of the Committee on General Welfare, the members of the Committee on Women and Gender Equity for convening today's hearing on housing instability among LGBTQIA individuals in New York City. I am joined today by John Rojas, HRA Chief Special Services Officer, Rima Rivera, HRA Deputy Commissioner for Domestic Violence Services, Andrea Reed, HRA Executive Deputy Commissioner for Housing Services, and Sonia Russell, DHS Interim Deputy Commissioner for Adult Services and Shelter Operations. Serving vulnerable populations is an integral part of our work at DSS. Through our work at the Human Resources Administration, or HRA, and the Department of Homeless Services, or DHS, we understand that our clients are reaching out for assistance precisely because they are in an acutely vulnerable moment. As stewards of critical programs and resources, it is incumbent upon us to recognize that one size does not fit all. That is why recognizing the unique experiences of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual, LGBTQIA, and transgender, and gender nonconforming TGNC communities is so important to our work. To that end, DSS is committed to ensuring our services are culturally competent and welcoming. At DSS, we are cognizant of the scale of the challenge in addressing housing security for LGBTQIA and TGNC communities. Unique drivers for homelessness include familial rejection due to sexual orientation or gender expression and unlawful housing and employment discrimination. An intersectional lens informs this conversation and our policies by bringing to the fore the way social identities interact with these communities. Systemic inequalities and discrimination can compound the challenges members of these communities face, and we cannot flatten the diversity experiences within the LGBTQIA and TGNC communities. For example, the many impacts of age, race, ethnicity, language, disability, class, documentation status, education, mental health, and more. Providing culturally competent services includes recognizing the reality of our clients' experiences at those intersections of identities, strengthening our partnerships with community-based organizations, and ongoing engagement to gather feedback and improve services. Building cultural competence begins with a foundation of setting expectations and training staff to meet those expectations. DSS Office of LGBTQIA Affairs works to identify and address systemic barriers affecting clients across DSS, HRA, DHS programs. This work includes improving service delivery, strengthening internal and external partnerships, and responding directly to client concerns related to access, discrimination, or safety. All DSS, DHS, and HRA staff are required to attend an LGBTQIA inclusion training. In addition to the mandatory one-time training, employees are also required to attend refresher trainings every 2 years. Providers and their staff are required to comply with New York City human rights law and citywide equal employment opportunity policy. Providers may also require that staff attend trainings beyond what's required by city law and policy, including trainings focused on the unique needs of TGNC clients. One such training available to city and provider staff is the placement procedure training for transgender and gender nonconforming clients, which focuses on creating a safe, affirming system for clients who self-identify as TGNC and raises awareness about more gender-affirming placement options for TGNC and individuals that are seeking shelter. There are limitations we must acknowledge, especially as it relates to data collection. DHS seeks to affirm each individual's gender identity and ensure that they are appropriately placed by giving clients the option to self-identify their gender through a voluntary gender identity screening, which occurs at intake. Clients who self-identify as TGNC are then given their gender-affirming placement options. DHS clients are also offered voluntary sexual orientation and gender identity survey at intake. However, because this is voluntary and not linked to a person's case or placement, it means participation is low, and our data on LGBTQIA and TGNC clients is limited. On the HRA side of the house, sexual orientation and gender identity data is voluntary and offered for clients enrolled in cash assistance, SNAP, and IDNYC benefits programs, as well as those seeking services for domestic violence per local law 130. We acknowledge our data represents an undercount of LGBTQIA and TGNC clients. Thus, the data we have significantly underrepresents the actual number of individuals receiving services across the DV and DHS shelter system. The voluntary data we collect is a factor that assists DSS in determining programmatic capacity needs and potential policy adjustments that could be made to better address the needs of the population. All DHS sites and provider locations are required by contract to be LGBTQIA affirming environments. Our goal is to create safe environments where LGBTQIA individuals are treated with the same degree of respect and dignity as all other identities. Affirming environments include visible signs in client and staff areas to make clear LGBTQIA people are welcome and valued parts of the community. For example, DSS ally cards, welcome palm cards, LGBTQIA themed posters. In addition to the responsibility of all shelter staff to be LGBTQIA affirming environments, DHS also has specialized shelters and beds that are exclusively dedicated to serving the LGBTQIA and TGNC clients. DHS goal and current practice is for individuals who self-report TGNC to receive expedited placement to a TGNC designated bed if that's what they choose. ACE's Place serves as the nation's first TGNC-specific shelter site that can accommodate 150 residents. Similarly, Marcia's House focuses on serving the broader spectrum of LGBTQIA residents, accommodating 80 residents overall. In addition, there are 42 beds at 6 shelters focused on serving TGNC clients at shelters in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. Regarding HRA programs, gender identity is considered by HASA when making emergency housing placements and flagged by clients' preference. Domestic violence services supports to both residential and non-residential services that are available to LGBTQIA and TGNC survivors. Our OCFS licensed DV shelters and Tier 2 shelters within the DHS system are required to serve all survivors who meet domestic violence eligibility criteria, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. So LGBTQIA and TGNC survivors have full access to residential services when DV shelter is the safest option. In addition, we fund non-residential supportive services in the community, including services specifically dedicated to LGBTQIA survivors through our contract with the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer Center, known as the Center. Through this partnership, clients can access culturally competent counseling, safety planning, case management, advocacy, support groups, and referrals without needing to enter shelter, ensuring there are affirming options for both inside and outside the residential system. The agency regularly checks in with advocates and clients on ways to improve our service model and to ensure that there are mechanisms and systems in place for LGBTQIA+ individuals to share their feedback on agency policy, services, and programs. To that end, both clients and advocates serve on advisory boards. For example, the LGBTQIA+ work group, HASA Community Advisory Board, and the Shelter Accessibility Advisory Board. We also receive feedback and complaints directly from clients through 311, the Office of the Ombudsman, the DSS Office of Equal Employment Opportunities, or the Office of LGBTQIA+ affairs within DSS, or any other avenues in which we receive feedback. Our goal is to ensure this population has ample options to offer that feedback. I want to take this opportunity to spotlight our forthcoming TGNC advisory group. It is a group that has been several years in the making. This client advisory group aims to engage community-based expertise, bring insights around what is working and what is not working, and what measures we can take to improve programs, services, and the experiences of TGNC individuals in the shelter system. This advisory group will include 6 to 8 clients who have experience with homelessness, and we aim for this advisory group to begin meeting later this year. I also want to highlight the work of our Shelter Accessibility Board here. This 9-member board meets quarterly and is the result of Local Law 23 of 2023. The board issued its first suite of recommendations in January. Those initial recommendations centered on access, support, workforce and staffing, and critical amenities. The board also focused on inclusivity, especially the safety needs of the TGNC population. The board recommended providers assess and mitigate client safety concerns in their community for individuals in their independent living plan. For example, the advisory board recommended shelter staff offer escorts to the bus and train. As a result of these recommendations, the TGNC shelter is now offering these escorts. The board also recommended that DHS take into account and consideration accessibility of transportation when making shelter placement determinations. We are taking a close look at how we can move forward with the board's recommendations and remain committed to an approach to service provision that ensures client safety and breaks down obstacles to housing and security. To provide an example on the point of breaking down barriers, we know that identification document mismatch can create barriers for our transgender clients. In our DSS, HRA, DHS systems, providers, and staff, in accordance with New York City law, use a person's preferred name even if they have not legally changed it. External entities' credit checks, proof of employment, or lease documents present challenges for transgender people seeking housing. In alignment with our commitment to helping clients find the support they need, staff are expected to work with TGNC clients to facilitate their road to independent living, including referrals for legal assistance with name changes. Our Office of Community Outreach, alongside our Office of LGBTQIA Affairs, serves as a crucial hub in connecting LGBTQIA+ and TGNC communities. Their work includes providing resources to community organizations like the Center, Ali Forney, and Bronx Legal Services, who work with DSS, HRA, DHS clients and assisting them to navigate benefits access. Our work includes providing dedicated trainings on benefits to community providers, sharing monthly updates through a newsletter to community providers, and coordinating access from more than 450 community-based organizations in total using the Access HRA provider portal. We also participate in panels, school and community events, shelter house meetings, and LGBTQIA+ support groups. I would like to take this opportunity to share what Mayor Mamdani has said. New York City is proud of its LGBTQIA+ community, will refuse to deny healthcare safety or dignity to anyone on the basis of their identity. DSS will continue to uphold our commitment to ensuring all of our services for the LGBTQIA+ culturally competent and welcoming. I will conclude by expressing my gratitude to my colleagues at DSS and across government, as well as countless human services providers, advocates, and community members, uplifting the dignity of our LGBTQIA+ and TGNC family, friends, and neighbors. We appreciate this opportunity to testify today, to say Happy Pride in this forum, and we welcome your questions. Thank you.
Testing. Good morning, Chairs Hudson and Farias, and members of the Committees on General Welfare, Children and Youth, and Women and Gender Equity. I am Associate Commissioner Wanda Asherle, pronouns she and her, at the New York City Department of Youth and Community Development. I am joined today by Tracy Thorne, pronouns she and her, Senior Director of Runaway and Homeless Youth Services. On behalf of Commissioner Escamilla Davies, we thank you for the opportunity to discuss how DYCD addresses housing instability among LGBTQI+ individuals. We also wish a happy Pride Month to LGBTQ+ New Yorkers and allies. DYCD recognizes that LGBTQ+ youth may face discrimination and harassment that puts them at disproportionate risks of housing instability, exploitation, and adverse health and mental health outcomes. Access to trusted adults, affirming environments, and high-quality services is critical to ensuring their safety, well-being, and long-term success. Today, with our dedicated provider network, advocates, and the City Council, DYCD has built a comprehensive continuum of services designed to meet the diverse needs of runaway and homeless youth ages 16 through 24. Our Runaway and Homeless Youth, RHY, programs provide holistic, youth-centered services that help young people achieve stability, independence, and opportunity. Through residential services, drop-in centers, and street outreach programs, DYCD and its providers serve more than 40,000 young people annually. Residential services include crisis services programs and transitional independent living support programs. Across the city, residential programs serving youth ages 16 through 24, providing a total of 863 beds. For homeless young adults ages 21 to 24, DYCD funds 6 programs with a total of 160 beds, 50 of which are scheduled to open in the next 6 weeks. We are especially pleased that in partnership with the Council and under the leadership of Chair Stevens, this capacity was expanded by 100 beds for homeless young adults in this fiscal year, strengthening our ability to meet growing needs. DYCD's 8 contracted drop-in centers are a safe place for LGBTQ+ youth and other young people to access essential resources such as food, clothing, and hygiene supplies, alongside a wide range of supportive services, including counseling, educational and health workshops, recreational programming, and referrals to additional services and shelter when needed. Specialized staff, including housing navigators, financial coaches, peer navigators, and mental health clinicians, work closely with young and young adults to help them identify goals and take meaningful steps toward long-term stability and self-sufficiency. To ensure accessibility, at least one drop-in center in every borough operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our street outreach programs engage young people where they are, focusing on locations where runaway and homeless youth are known to congregate. Outreach teams provide immediate support, information, safety planning, and connections to housing and other critical services. DYCD-funded RHY providers help young people navigate a wide range of challenges through individualized counseling, case management, and service referrals. From intake assessments through ongoing case management, providers work to identify each young person's strengths, needs, and goals while connecting them to services that support their overall well-being, and including in specialized mental health care when appropriate. All our RHY providers are trained for and welcoming to LGBTQ+ youth, including mission-oriented organizations like Ali Forney Center, all of which have particular expertise and focus on serving LGBTQ+ young people experiencing homelessness. This includes professional development regarding sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, gender-affirming interactions that foster respect and appreciation, physically safe and culturally positive environments, and swift response to issues of bias and discrimination. In RHY programs, counselors work collaboratively with youth to develop individualized service plans that establish both short and long-term goals. Through direct services and community partnerships, youth can access a broad range of supports, including physical and mental health services, educational and career development opportunities, substance use prevention services, violence intervention and prevention counseling, and housing assistance. When appropriate, providers also support family reunification efforts or help youth transition to longer-term housing and supportive programs. Thank you again for the opportunity to discuss DYCD's efforts to address housing instability among LGBTQ+ youth. We remain committed to working alongside the Council, providers, advocates, and young people with lived experience to strengthen services and expand opportunities for the youth we serve. We are pleased to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for all of you for such thoughtful testimony. I would like to start off with some questions for the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. What supports will be offered by the office around housing for LGBTQ plus individuals?
Thank you for the question. So that is certainly still within our planning. As you know, we're a new office. We're about 2 months in. We're also in the midst of budget season. And so while our strategic planning has been ongoing, I want to stress that a big part of it will be based in agency partnerships. And again, making sure they are abiding by the law, making sure that they have the best policies and practices. But most importantly, I think what I have brought to this office is innovation. And to me, that means doing more. I think that's what's required.
And so some of the agencies you're planning to coordinate with are like DSS, HRA, DYCD around housing services for LGBTQ+.
Absolutely. As I understand the mandates for this office, as informed by the mayor's agenda, we reach across all agencies in New York City and all agencies that touch the lives of LGBTQI New Yorkers.
Do you think there's any necessary budgetary items that your office will require in order to accomplish some of this?
So those negotiations are ongoing, and we have contacts with OMB. We're housed within the Mayor's Office of Equity and Racial Justice, and so our budget is also tied to that as well. And so right now, I would defer to my OMB colleagues and contacts, but I remain hopeful.
Okay, we'll bother them. We got it.
Please do.
Are you planning on offering any specific trainings on serving LGBTQ plus individuals seeking housing services from the office itself?
Absolutely. I think one thing that I'm careful of in coming into this position is not being necessarily repetitive. And so I want to make sure that I have a good assessment of what's available now. There are trainings that are offered through CCHR. Obviously, there are mandated trainings that are required by law. There's trainings provided by DSS, as Commissioner Dalton mentioned. I inherited ongoing work in compliance with Local Law 71 and 73, which also tie into rights and resources, and also as well as different kinds of campaigns, which include trainings focused on rights and resources for TGNC and MB New Yorkers, as well as the unique needs of immigrant LGBTQI New Yorkers as well. And so I certainly have the expertise and certainly can make that available. And I think it just takes an assessment of what's available, but would be happy to offer it.
That's great. The New York City Unity Project has maintained a guide of organizations working to support housing and shelter services for LGBTQ plus individuals in the past. As the new office is set to absorb the Unity Project, will you keep the guide up to date?
Absolutely, and not just in the housing space, but across all areas of life.
And are there any thoughts on planning or offering any community outreach or education campaigns around the issue itself?
Right now, in this moment, I cannot say that we have any active plans, but I think, again, that is something that we are considering. I think from my own personal experience and background, when people are informed of their rights and are aware of their rights, that is how they're best enforced, and people are best made to abide by them. So certainly something we will consider.
And just my last question for us as chairs, do you have an allocation for your budget already set for the office?
So that terminology is new to me, new to government. So as I understand it, we do have an allocation for staffing lines. We do have an allocation for some programmatic work, which was one of the primary functions of the Unity Project. And again, I think that my understanding is those exact amounts the negotiations are ongoing.
Okay, do you know the previous amount? If there were any towards the services that are under your bucket now?
So the way that the Unity Project worked primarily was through budget allocations that lied in other agencies. For example, I'm aware of a $400,000 fund that lies within DOHMH, and so this would be specifically tied to sort of healthcare program and funding. Mm-hmm. There were some one-time grant opportunities, including the Transgender Emergency Fund, the Unity grants. But from my general understanding of the 10 years of Unity Project sort of funding model is that none of them were I think the $400,000 one is the only one that's sort of every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Good for us to know. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I'm going to move over to DYCD. How many LGBTQ youth experiencing homelessness are currently being served through DYCD funded programs?
Thank you for the question. Youth currently are not required to disclose gender identity or sexual orientation with their RHY programs. But to date, as of May 2026, 700 youth who reported as identifying as LGBTQIA+ were entered into our residential programs. And then we had 564 young people that reported as identifying LGBTQIA+ started receiving case management and services at the drop-in centers.
Got it. And what percentage of youth in DYCD funded runaway and homeless youth programs identify as LGBTQ plus?
Thank you. We have 38% of the young people have been entered into our programs
Right.
and identifying as LGBTQIA. And then we have 35% of the young people who entered our residential programs that reported the same. And then 42% were in our drop-in centers.
Okay. And how do you folks at DYCD ensure that the LGBTQ youth know about the available services and can access them safely? Obviously, like the drop-in centers are a great example where there's 24-hour care and they can go in at any point. But other than services like the drop-in centers, how are we looking at making those available and the outreach?
Yeah, I think one of the things that works, and we've seen it historically, and I think it works with any program, is like word of mouth. I think young people talk to each other, and they hear about the great things that are happening, and so that's been really helpful, especially for our LGBTQIA young population. We rely on Sorry, thank you so much. We rely on referrals. DYCD also has a strong social media presence in Instagram and Facebook, Twitter. We also have Discover DYCD, where all the services are available and accessible, and people can inquire about these programs. And then we have the Palm cards, which we actually brought extras, so we can distribute some of those. And that's also available. And then we also have the street outreach piece, where we have 6 days per week assisting youth in need. And then, as you mentioned, our drop-in centers, and then the street outreach vans, as I mentioned.
In terms of the street outreach team, how do you folks determine where the outreach team needs to go? Is it data aggregated? Is it, again, a word of mouth situation where we're hearing from folks that are already receiving services that there's a big need in a community?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The street outreach is run by StreetWorks, a Safe Horizon program, and they determine every week they send out a list of where they're going to be. There's a north and a south van, and it's based on what they see when they're out there. It's based on what they're hearing from young people at the drop-in centers, and so it changes. Their locations change as needed, but they cover parks, subways, and any other places that they're hearing that young people are.
And is it they're providing services on site, like immediate care that's needed or resource that's needed, but also helping bring folks into a drop-in center?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
absolutely correct.
Thank you. Can you folks describe any long-term housing outcomes, if we have that data, for LGBTQ youth who participate in the DYCD funded programs, and if we know how many LGBTQ youth successfully transition into permanent housing each year for the last 5 years or 3 years?
So, according to the most recent data concerning long-term housing, we have 15% of our young people were returned home, and 20% had established other residents, whether it was through friends or relatives. We had 12% that transitioned into independent living. And then we had 42% that received a variety of services, including crisis services, foster home care, DHS shelters, and supportive housing. And then there were some that were unknown for us. And then we have a more detailed report that we can make available.
Yeah.
We don't have the information readily available for like the 5-year trend, and we're gonna look into that and
Okay,
make that
that would
available
be
for you.
extremely helpful, obviously, as we're trying to see where trends
Right.
are and where more resources need to go. Every budget fight requires this kind of data to look into, so that would be really helpful. In terms of the percentages for folks, quote unquote, returned home and either finding placement with friends or family, are we looking at ensuring that they have like an individual room? We're not making sure folks are maybe transitioning into into someone's home, but like on a couch for 6 months, like are we tracking post 1 year, post 2 years? How long are we also tracking the folks that are coming in for services?
I can start, and then you'll correct me if I'm. All right, I'll take the lead. I'll start, and then I'll tap in Tracy if I'm missing something. She'll keep me honest. I will say that our young people have continuous counseling and support services, and so our providers ensure that there's a touch point and there's a continuous connection to make sure that the young people are receiving services, additional supportive services, whether it's employment or education, and so they try to continue to make those connections even while they're in a place, in a house, in a home. Is that correct? Yeah.
And then I hear, or in the testimony, there was a program or initiative for preventing family rejection or reducing or reunifying. I think the language was reunification. What are some of those programs or initiatives? Like, what do they look like, and how do we get to it before it occurs, or are we reactive in a way in terms of the like reunification back into the home?
So our drop-in centers, they offer supportive services for our young people that are going toward becoming homeless, and so some of the services includes counseling and referrals to healthcare, education, and employment opportunities. When LGBTQ youth are served in our programs, there is a unique opportunity to create a safe and protective space. They build relationships with the young people that are there. The programs offer an opportunity for you to create a caring communities. And then because the programs are youth-centered, services, including family unification, are driven by young people's youth voice. So they pretty much let the provider and the counselor know whether or not they want to reunite with their families. And then they receive, if they don't, they receive ongoing support and counseling. If they do, the family receives support services as well as, so the whole family as well as individuals.
Are we hearing from from young people what the reasoning is for, either the disconnect at home or getting kicked out of their home from their family? Like, are we using any of that information to kind of dictate the type of, whether it's therapy sessions or what the reunification process looks like? Like, I imagine patriarchal systems are something that are heavy on why some folks have to leave their household, or religious and cultural issues. I'm just wondering, how are we taking those lived experiences and then responding, both as a city? I think beyond just this moment, we really should be looking at how to deal with machismo and patriarchal systems in this way, but also just like, how are we empowering the young people in this position and going back to their family or living independently? Like, are those conversations a way that part of how we're determining services to young people?
Yeah, I think when Wanda mentioned that the young people drive the services that they require, that's how we're ensuring that we're offering young people what they need to feel supported, to move along in their journey toward self-sufficiency and feeling and increasing their resilience. So it's a case-by-case basis, but we know that from our intakes that family rejection and family discord is one of the number one reasons that young people are coming to us for services, and we're here for them.
When youth age out of the runaway and homeless youth shelters, there's a process by which they can be referred directly to DHS. According to the most recent streamlined referral process report from the period of January 1 through June 30th of 2025, 40 young people were referred to DHS. How does DYCD ensure that LGBTQ plus youth who are referred to DHS get placed within a shelter which matches their gender identity or into a specialized LGBTQ plus bed, should that be their preference?
The intake staff at DHS are our partners. We're in contact almost every day, and they do a great job making sure that young people are placed in programs that are affirming and meet their needs. We have a lot of great placements with Marcia's House, Ace's Place, and other sites. And if there is a need for further clarification, if maybe there was something that wasn't listed on the streamline referral form, DHS is really responsive to making sure that people are placed in the right locations.
And as we've already spoken about a bit, young people enter crisis shelters by referral, walking in themselves, or walking into a drop-in center, or even via the street outreach team. Do you folks have an idea of what % of young people enter shelters via each of these pathways? Do we have that breakdown of whether it's street team, whether it's the referral, or walking in them on their own?
We could get back to you about that. For
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And my last question before I kick it over to Chair Hudson. According to Local Law 79 report on the Runaway and Homeless Youth Service Access Report for the period July through December of 2025, 500 of the 592 youth not placed, 36% identified as LGBTQ. Do you know the reason for the lack of the placements?
Generally, the reason for lack of placements is lack of bed availability.
Sorry?
Lack of bed availability.
Bed availability. Got it. Okay. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I'll kick it over to Council Member Hudson.
Thank you so much. I did have one follow-up question from Chair Farias about the support services that are provided for families. Who provides those services? Are those provided by DYCD, or do you subcontract to other organizations? Around family mediation and reunification?
Our providers provide those services directly.
So who are some of those providers?
Ali Forney, off the top of my head, I can't remember all of them. Rising Ground,
Okay.
to name a few.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to ask questions of DSS. So how does DSS coordinate with other city agencies to meet the needs of homeless and housing insecure LGBTQ plus individuals?
Thank you for the question. And as you know, Chair Hudson and others probably know, I've been here just a couple of months, and so it's a great opportunity for me to learn a little bit more, deepen my understanding of the work we do in this area. This one I can take, but I will probably rely on my colleagues here, probably especially Deputy Commissioner Russell for detailed questions. But yes, for when it comes to addressing the issues of housing insecurity for this population, we certainly work across the team who is here on the dais. We also work with our partners in housing like HPD and Nycc. And so in addition, for special populations like older adults, we work with our partners in aging and so on. So I think there's a good amount of collaboration, and I think a good amount of advocacy from the mayor's agencies and departments to ensure that the clients that they're working with are treated well and get the access to the resources they need in our systems.
Thank you. How does DSS coordinate with the Department for Veteran Services to ensure that LGBTQ plus veterans seeking shelter are housed appropriately? And can you share what that intake process looks like?
Thank you for the question. So DHS has intake centers that serves those that are seeking temporary housing assistance throughout the 5 boroughs. We have intake centers for families with children. We have those for adult families, as well as single men and single women. And it's at the intake center where we ask a series of questions for those that are seeking temporary housing to better assist them based on their circumstances and needs that brought them into the system. We also offer a voluntary gender ID screener for those who while we don't ask for their specific sexual orientation, we do have this voluntary screener. And depending on if they choose to either complete the screener or if they prefer to self-identify. So for those individuals that prefer to self-identify as either being part of the LGBTQI or TGNC, in addition to if they articulate that they are a veteran, we will work with them to provide accommodation that best suits their needs as LGBTQI, TGNC, and/or a veteran. Or if they just choose to go into a TGNC program, we will definitely offer those accommodations as well.
Thank you. And then the same question with regards to NYC aging and LGBTQIA plus older adults seeking shelter and whether or not they're housed appropriately.
Thank you again. So it's similar to the intake process that we offer for those who are veterans. So we do have shelters that are specific to our mature unhoused population, 55 plus or 60 plus, who are unhoused. And again, while we don't ask for their sexual orientation, they can complete the voluntary ID screener and or self-identify. And for those individuals who have a mobility and or accessibility needs, the agency does offer what's called a reasonable accommodation process. And this is for those individuals where the accommodation is not apparent and or obvious. So if someone has specific needs, they will complete this reasonable accommodation, they will go through the process, and we will place them into facilities that's specific to their mobility and accommodation needs.
Thank you for that. And then Chair Farias and I were discussing, I mean, we totally understand, obviously, and particularly as legislators, the legal limitations that exist around identification. But we're curious to know how aggressively, for lack of a better word, you all are offering the opportunity for people to, identify a particular way. Because if it's something where somebody mentions it in a passing conversation, as opposed to a staff on the front lines, saying, if you happen to identify this particular way, we have resources and services available to you to address specific needs. So we're just trying to understand how aggressive those options are being provided. And just as an example, for an accessibility need or a disability, I'm sure we're pretty aggressively offering, if you have a need that or a disability that isn't visible to us, we want you to know that, are we doing the same for LGBTQIA plus folks that are coming through the system?
Thank you for that question. So while we don't want to necessarily push or force individuals to identify as such, again, we do ask if they want to complete the voluntary gender ID screener.
So you're asking everybody that?
Correct.
Okay.
And we're also asking for their preferred name. Mm-hmm. So some individuals may come in as Sonia, but I may say my preferred name is Samuel. Mm-hmm. And it's that point that we will ask whether or not they want to voluntarily complete the screener. And if not, if they say, well, I identify this way and I wish to be placed in a shelter that, based on how I identify, then we will accommodate that. But again, we want to be sensitive and not overly aggressive with individuals that come into our shelter system and allow them to identify how they wish to do so. And they may choose not to identify at intake, but perhaps they identify once they are placed in their shelter. And again, they're offered the opportunity to say, you know what, I'd rather be placed in a shelter, again, based on how I self-identify,
right,
in which we will allow them to transfer to that specific shelter as well.
I probably should have used proactively rather than aggressively. I didn't mean to imply you should aggressively ask people, but the point is, and I just want to clarify, are you actually asking everyone during intake if they'd like to complete the form, or is it only when somebody has perhaps shared some bit of information relevant that maybe then they're being offered the opportunity to complete that form or assessment?
Thank you. So I would say it's both. We are required to ask them, but again, if someone offers information, then the staff will definitely say, please, you should fill the questionnaire, the gender screener.
Okay, thank you. DSS does dedicated outreach to street homeless individuals. What training do outreach workers receive in relation to engaging with LGBTQ plus individuals who are street homeless, especially in relation to supporting them, their transition into shelters?
Thank you for that question. All DHS staff, as well as DHS contracted providers, are required to have an LGBTQIA plus training within 90 days of start date and with every 2 years thereafter. So there is required training. In addition, our providers may offer additional support and training. Just one example of training that's available to city and provider staff is the placement procedure training for transgender and gender nonconforming clients. So that's one additional opportunity. And when it comes to coordinating placement in the shelter system, I think particularly for folks who are on the street, unhoused, we really do need to be at least aspiring to creative, individualized solutions for those folks. We know our shelter system works pretty well for the vast majority of people, but for people who are on the streets today, we want to make sure we're offering those individualized solutions. We do train our staff and our providers when new opportunities for housing come on board, and so we're doing that kind of work, but also I'm particularly interested in understanding how individualized and creative we can be for people who are on the street.
Thank you. And do you all track incidents of harassment, bullying, or violence towards LGBTQ plus shelter residents?
We do, and I can provide that data for the last year if that's helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm providing it in the way that it is tracked in our systems, which may not correspond exactly to the question. So this is for July 1, 2025 through June 16th, 2026, so not through the full year.
Right.
And so in terms of discrimination type, for gender discrimination, across DHS shelters and HRA shelters, the count is 61. I can break that down further if you'd like.
If you've got it further.
I've got it.
Yeah.
So for gender discrimination, for DHS, it's 54. For HRA, it's 7 for a total of 61. Within the shelter system for TGNC discrimination, for DHS, 24. For HRA, 0, and that's 24. For TGNC harassment within shelter, for DHS, 5. For HRA, 0, so a total of 5. And then for TGNC retaliation in the DHS shelter system, that's 2. HRA, that's 0, and for a total of 2. So a total of 92 reports across that system. And just to note, those figures reflect concerns raised through the IQ system that may come through the Ombudsman, 311, nyc.gov, one number, mail, walk-in, email. Does not include 911 calls, provider-level managed complaints, other incidents.
Okay. Do you track those other incidents, though?
I'm going to defer to Deputy Commissioner Russell on whether we have access to the shelter level incidents. And 911 calls is certainly something I think I mentioned in a previous hearing. I'm trying to make sure we have ready access to across all of our shelters.
Thank you, Commissioner. So yes, as it relates to the shelter-related incidents, while I don't have that specific data with me today, we do track those incidents that are reported at a shelter level.
You do track them.
We do.
Do you have any numbers to share?
I actually do, I think.
And also, I would love the FY25 numbers if you have them
Yeah, we have those.
as well.
Yeah. All right, so I can give you the FY25 numbers just as I did before, so the category.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yep, so starting with gender discrimination, DHS 46, HRA 11 for a count of 57. TGNC discrimination, DHS 7, HRA 0, total of 7. TGNC harassment, DHS 5, HRA 0 for a total of 5. TGNC retaliation, DHS 6, HRA 0 for a total of 6. And so,
Thank you.
yep. And then I don't have, we can, as Deputy Commissioner suggested, we can get you priority 1 incidents that I know are tracked. I do have them for Ace's Place and Marcia's house, if you'd like those.
And what are the standard actions? Yes, you can follow up with us
Okay,
with those
great.
if you want, unless our counsel wants them to say it now on the record. Okay. And what are the standard actions that DSS may take in response to these reports? And I've noticed, obviously, that the majority of these complaints, almost the entirety of the complaints, if I'm not mistaken, are in DHS as opposed to HRA. And so specifically with regards to DHS, what are you all doing to address these complaints and experiences?
Yeah, I'll start, and if the Deputy Commissioner wants to jump in, I'd welcome that. I mean, it's our responsibility to investigate all of these complaints, and if there are systemic issues, to work across the whole system to ensure that we make improvements, and we do that through our DSS Office of LGBTQIA+ Affairs. If there are shelter-specific issues, we certainly take those very, very seriously and work with the shelter to make changes and corrective action plans and so on. And whenever possible, when we have the information, we do work to get that information back to the person who complained and work with them directly to share those results.
Okay, no follow-up? Thanks. All right, how many dedicated shelter beds exist for transgender and gender nonconforming people across the 5 boroughs?
I'll take that too. Today, there are 192 beds across 4 boroughs, so with 2 sites in the Bronx, 1 in Brooklyn, 2 in Queens, and 2 in Manhattan.
Can you give me the bed breakdown by borough?
Sure. So for the Bronx, 21 beds total. Brooklyn, 5 beds total. Queens, 159 beds total. And Manhattan, 7 beds total.
Thank you. Mariah Lopez versus New York City Department of Homeless Services resulted in settlement in which the city agreed to establish shelter units that serve and affirm trans, non-binary, and gender nonconforming people in every borough and improve policies and procedures to protect TGNC clients. Pursuant to this settlement, DHS is required to strengthen protections against retaliation for LGBTQIA+ residents who file complaints. How have you implemented this? And are there plans to put any beds in Staten Island?
Thank you for the question. So the requirements in the Lopez settlement were specific to TGNC clients. All agency and provider staff are required to receive training specific to respectfully working with this population, and DHS requires that all new staff complete trainings within 90 days of hiring and refreshers every 2 years, as I mentioned. We also have all staff sign a non-discrimination agreement and created designated categories to track TGNC retaliation complaints. Note that for every floor at Ace's Place, there's a way for people to complain. I was out there recently and did take note compared to any other shelter that I've seen anywhere, how much care they take. There's a QR code on the elevators. There's a paper form on every single floor. So from my perspective, they go out of their way at Ace's Place to ensure that people have opportunity to complain. And also pursuant to the settlement, we took a number of steps to improve the reporting procedures. So we've adjusted the rights and responsibilities that every client receives and signs, explicitly referring to the rights of LGBTQIA+ and TGNC clients. We've also, for every TGNC client receives a brochure about their rights and how to report concerns outside of their shelter. We updated our complaint tracking system to have designated categories. So those are some of the ways that we've complied. I cannot speak to, but certainly part of any planning process, I can't speak to whether we are looking at additional beds in Staten Island, but certainly something I'll take note of.
Great, thank you. I'm going to pause briefly and turn it over to Councilmember Wilson to ask a question.
Thank you, chairs. Good morning. I have some questions I think best for DSS as well. First is around LGBTQ older adults. in 2017, a survey of queer older adults, nearly 1/4 of the respondents earned less than 30% of area median income, and nearly 1 in 4 of the respondents reported living in substandard housing, and some even in shelters. So what steps can we take to ensure that seniors have stable, safe housing where their medical and social needs are met? And are there specific programs for LGBTQI plus seniors that may be in shelter?
Thank you for the question. I'll start. Yeah, I think across the country we've seen a rise in older adults facing homelessness, and from my perspective, certainly not acceptable for our folks, older folks on fixed incomes, to be at this stage in their life trying to figure out where they're going to spend their next night. And so I think all of our programs, diversion and so on, are of course available to older adults. And I think it's a good point. I can't speak to the ways we might be working with our colleagues in aging, but we have a great commissioner there that I'd love to work with to make sure people understand what's available, understand how they might be able to stay successfully within their homes, what we might do to reduce entries into the system. So that's something I can take as a follow-up. And it is nice to hear, again, being new to New York, that we have specific facilities and shelters for 55 plus, 65 plus, and I suspect, but I'll let the Deputy Commissioner speak to it, that there are good partnerships with the senior centers and other aging systems within those shelters. But let me see if she has something to add.
Thank you, Commissioner. So as Commissioner Dalton started out with, our shelter providers do work directly with those not-for-profits that perhaps offer assistance for our more mature population that are 55 or 60 plus. So we give a level of autonomy to those providers to build those relationships with organizations that can tailor their services for those that are in that particular shelter.
There are programs, now just pivoting to support with folks with HIV and AIDS. There's programs like the Ryan White Part A housing and HIV emergency shelter allowance that are really important ways to connecting people with HIV and AIDS to housing. But they're established a long time ago, usually in the height of the epidemic. And how can we update these programs for the needs of the present?
I'm going to defer there. Yeah.
So good morning, John Rojas. You're right. A lot of the programs were created. Ryan White, I believe, was created in 1991. The Ryan White Part A grant, HOPWA, equally in 1992. Both Ryan White and HOPWA, the Housing Opportunity Persons with AIDS, through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, have modified and revised their programs recently. HOPWA most recently did a HOPWA modernization. In the past, they used to calculate how they gave money to eligible metropolitan statistical areas through AIDS only, not including persons living with HIV, and that was changed. Also, in the past, they used to use statistical calculations including persons who were deceased, instead of including persons who were living and newly diagnosed but not AIDS diagnosed. So luckily that changed, and it really did change the portfolio of the services. Actually, New York City took a hit, and probably not popularly say this, but it should have more appropriately divvied up the money to localities across the country who really did need the money more based on a growing number of cases in other states. So there are, on the federal level, modernization and updates to the programs. On the local level, the HIV/AIDS Services Administration, HACA, has a participant who sits on the HIV Ryan White Planning Council. That's the Executive Deputy Commissioner, Jacqueline Dudley. She sits on the Ryan White Part A Planning Council and gives input as overseeing HACA and the services that we provide on how we can update the services, including the aging population of folks living with HIV and AIDS.
Thank you. And then just one question about LGBTQ youth. There have been some organizations that have advocated for like targeting housing assistance programs that consist of one-time cash payments to youth at risk of homelessness, along with housing navigation and financial coaching and other forms of guidance in order to prevent youth homelessness. I'm just curious your opinions on the efficiency of that method and if that's something that's ever been considered.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. There's been a few pilots for young people who are experiencing homelessness, and it's any resource that could help prevent homelessness and to support young people and to kind of relieve the stress burden that they're experiencing by offering cash is a good idea. But at this moment, there's no program that DYCD is working on, is undergoing right now.
The pilots that you mentioned, where have those taking place in the city here?
Yeah, they were partnerships with CBOs, and one was the Trust Youth Initiative with Ali Forney Center and Point Source Youth, and then Point Source Youth is also working on other groups, and then there's one at Covenant House, and I've just told you just about all I know about how they're going. So,
Okay.
but yeah, it's a good resource in theory.
And I'll say again, coming in, obviously, and still being new and still being planning, I think that ideas like that and pilot initiatives are very smart. I think, again, in terms of the framing, as I put it down, when we look at sort of the drivers of homelessness and housing insecurity, and especially as that's broken down by race and socioeconomic status, direct assistance is what people need across the spectrum. And so I think, we certainly have to be smart about that in terms of like when we say direct cash, but does that mean working directly with landlords or having contracts with specific housing projects or creating those housing projects where we have sort of the direct ability to fund those things to make sure that people have the stability they need. But again, also tying into that pilot initiative and those kinds of programs, what I'm understanding is generally described as wraparound services, but moving people towards independence and self-sustainability. So that means ensuring that people have the educational opportunities, have the employment opportunities to eventually become self-sufficient. But I will say, just hearing like a one-time shot, and I think there's programs like that, I think it requires a more sustained investment.
Thank you. Okay, back to DSS. So what increased oversight and accountability measures has DHS implemented to address discrimination and unsafe conditions for LGBTQ plus shelter residents?
Thank you. So we take the dignity and safety of our clients seriously, and we continually monitor conditions to ensure shelter conditions are safe and supportive. And depending on the circumstances, our responsive are proactive and sometimes reactive. As relates to the proactive side, our DHS Code of Conduct mandates that clients have the right not to be discriminated against due to their sexual orientation or gender identity, and not be discriminated against by other clients. The trainings that DHS staff and providers are required to take speak to how to handle these complaints of discrimination from LGBTQI+ and TG&C communities. We monitor whether staff or providers have taken the required training. On the reactive side, we do review the data as it relates to incidences, and we have conversations with our providers when we notice that there's an uptick or a trend that's starting to occur, and we work on how to mitigate those concerns. Depending on the level of the complaint, we will make a transfer or other accommodations when we deem necessary as a result. Provider accountability is consistent in all cases. DHS shelter operations staff will make regular on-site visits to these locations to ensure safety standards are being upheld by our providers.
And the transfer or accommodations, is that in reference to the residents or the staff? Like if there's a complaint about a staff, how are you addressing that? Are you moving the resident or are you moving the staff?
So depending on the circumstances, it may be that we move the staff or it may be that we move the resident. Sometimes a resident may request to be transferred, and we will accommodate them accordingly.
Okay. I just want to make the point that I think, and I'm sure you all share this, but sometimes what we say in theory doesn't always match what happens in practice. And so I think it's important to start with the staff. If a staff needs to be relocated, especially considering, you know, the shelter population, and making sure that we're addressing whatever needs to happen at the staff level before we're moving residents that might be in shelter.
And I agree with you.
Yeah, I knew you would. How is DHS working to better address the unique needs of LGBTQIA plus individuals? I guess you sort of addressed that, but
I'll just add 2 things. It is a real asset to have the DSS Office of LGBTQIA plus affairs to sit, of course, over both DHS and HRA and all of our programs, and be another place where we can be out in the community understanding the issues, where that is separate from the shelter system, and I hope is seen as independent from the rest of our services. Understand those needs, again, be in community. And also, again, just to mention, I mentioned this in my testimony, but we're really excited about the advisory committee that will be standing up later this fall for TGNC, identifying folks in particular to help inform us on how the system can, we can improve services across both DHS and HRA. So I think in addition to what we've already raised, those 2 assets I think will be important.
thank you. And I failed to acknowledge that we've also been joined by Councilmember Nurse and Public Advocate Williams, who I believe would like to share some remarks.
Thank you, Madam. Hello. Thank you, Madam Chair. Much appreciated. I'm still riding high, so I want to say Nixon 5. That's just how I say hello. Good afternoon, peace and blessing, love and light to everyone. My name is Jamani Williams, Public Advocate for the City of New York. I'd like to thank Chair Farias, Chair Hudson, members of the Women and Gender Equity and General Welfare Committee for holding this hearing, for the opportunity to share testimony, and the admin who's here as well. New York City is currently in the midst of an unparalleled housing crisis, one that is making it difficult for immigrants, young people in marginalized communities to obtain any sort of affordable housing. Rising costs and a lack of deeply affordable housing has slowly but surely pushed more and more New Yorkers from the communities and neighborhoods they have called home. I forgot to mention this is an opening statement in the middle of the hearings, but thank you for allowing me to make it. LGBTQIA plus individuals are disproportionately affected by the housing crisis and by discrimination in the rental and senior housing markets. Research done by Homeward NYC shows that despite representing 7% of the general population, LGBTQ plus youth make up roughly 40% of unhoused youth. They face high levels of harassment and violence on the street, shelter system. LGBTQ young people are more likely to engage in sex work or survival sex and are at high risk for sexual assault. LGBTQ plus youth consider suicide at about 4 times the rate of their heterosexual and cisgender peers, and they're up to 4 times more likely to attempt suicide. Studies have also shown that housing providers are less likely to respond to rental inquiries from same-sex couples. As housing costs continue to rise, many LGBTQ plus seniors on fixed incomes struggle to remain in their homes and communities and thus are forced to look for alternative living arrangements. With many facilities run by provider organizations or religiously affiliated groups, LGBTQ plus elders frequently are at risk of facing discrimination in assisted living facilities and or senior housing, and therefore face harassment or pressure to hide their sexual orientation or gender identity. With increasing attacks from the federal administration, our transgender and gender nonconforming siblings face significant barriers in the traditional shelter system, often experience targeted violence or at a lack of appropriate resources, both to discrimination, but also due to lack of funding and resources. I do want to make sure we highlight the intersection of LGBTQIA plus and being Black and brown or immigrant. The intersection makes it even worse. I always want to highlight Black trans women in particular, who seem to have the brunt of what's happening. Housing is a human right, and as a city, we need to ensure that all New Yorkers have equal access to stable housing regardless of their sexuality or gender identity. Under New York City's human rights law, it is illegal for landlords, real estate agents, or co-op condo boards to refuse housing, charge higher rent, or harass individuals based on sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender. And at least for now, fair housing laws also make discrimination based on HIV/AIDS status or gender dysphoria illegal. I'll be remiss in not mentioning the efforts of organizations like Ali Forney, who established the B. Arthur House and an 18-bed transitional housing facility in Manhattan for LGBTQIA+ youth, and SAGE, who continues to support LGBTQIA+ seniors with housing. But we must endeavor to do more. We as a city must continue to push more affordable and sustainable housing for LGBTQIA+ individuals, with a particular focus on housing for the youth and seniors already at a higher risk of homelessness. Look forward to continuing the discussion today and how my office can continue to support this important work and how we as a city can continue to fight for more equitable New York for all. And I would say I think the results of the races last night really highlight how important this is and how much New York wants to see everyone be able to be housed. Lastly, I do want to just lift up the name of the late Lou Filler, may he rest in peace. This type of housing was actually something that he was very big on, even though his community was not. So I just want to lift him up for the work that he did on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Public Advocate. Okay, now back to our regularly scheduled hearing. I just want to go back to the staff training. You said for new employees, they're required to do the training within 90 days of employment. And then what is the subsequent training after that? Is it annual? Every 2 years? Sorry, can you just say that into the microphone?
I can, every 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, Aces Place is the city's first trans and gender nonconforming dedicated shelter following the Lopez settlement and was opened in 2022. Of the 150 beds available at Aces Place, how many are currently occupied?
Yeah, I have that. Yes, as of last week, there were 109 individuals at Aces Place, which I think opened in 2025. So that's what I have.
Opened in 2025.
That's what I have, yeah.
Okay. And sorry, I just wanted to reference something in your. Okay, I'll look for that in a second. Yeah. How were referrals made for Aces Place?
Yep, I will, I'll start, and certainly if the Deputy Commissioner wants to add anything. It's as we've described, at intake, we ask everyone if they would like to complete a gender identity screener, and if their identity suggests Aces Place, then we would make that offer amongst other considerations. And just to also note, again, this was, I think, stated by the Deputy Commissioner, but likely we do have a number of folks who identify later, whether in their current shelter or to their case manager, in which case we, across all of our programs and shelters, would seek to make accommodations to have people in the right place.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, I just want to jump to DYCD for 1 second and just ask, of the 40,000 young people you serve annually, are those all unique numbers, or are they repeat clients coming through? Like, might you count somebody more than once if they're seeking services more than once?
Yes, they would be duplicated.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do
they
you
would be
know how
receiving-
many of the 40,000 are unique or like a percentage?
A lot. We count outreach for outreach activities, and so the outreach we don't have unduplicated outreach. There's thousands of people that we reach out to. The drop-in centers go out and do presentations at schools, other community-based organizations, and tabling events. So that's part of that 40,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. If it's possible to break any of that down at a later date, we would love the follow-up. And then just going back to Aces Place, what type of inspection and oversight is taking place there? Is that where you mentioned you visited recently, Commissioner? I just want to note that there have been recent reports of subpar living conditions, safety issues, and harassment So it'd be great if you can just provide an update on how DSS is handling these issues and what type of oversight you all are providing.
Sorry, yes, thank you for the question. It's my understanding that some of the complaints that you're referring to were related to facility issues when the pipes burst during the extended code blue, and that was addressed expediently and clients were moved to rooms with heat and water. We certainly take all complaints very seriously. There's an assigned DHS program administrator who works closely with ACES Place to ensure compliance. There were also complaints about alleged client harassment that were investigated and resulted in continued discussions with clients regarding respecting gender identity and expression of other clients and staff. And additional training for staff was put in place to better support the diversity of gender expression and gender identity there. Yes, and as I said, in terms of the actual physical conditions of the location, I found the shelter to be very nice and went in several rooms, the common spaces throughout the building, the offices, where the psychiatric nurse works, and so on. And so, from a physical perspective, I found ACES Place to be really nice with really nice outdoor space. But that, of course, doesn't speak to how people might be treated there, which again we take very seriously.
And I think just to highlight sort of the cooperation amongst agencies. Coming into office, I took a survey of all litigations against the city dealing with LGBTQI issues, including there's ongoing litigation around the settlement agreement specifically. And so I just want to flag that those issues were brought to our office as well, including the letter that was sent to the mayor back in February. So it's something that we have paid attention to. I've been in touch with the DSS director of LGBTQI Affairs, Brent Whitfield, and have also planned a visit to ACES Place, as well as the other dedicated sites for TGNC people.
Okay, great, thank you. And those are, you've scheduled them, so they will be occurring, or have you visited any of them as of yet?
Well, one was actually supposed to happen today, but then
Okay.
I got to this hearing, so we're in the midst of rescheduling that.
Okay.
And then the other ones will be scheduled, and also it's going to be an opportunity to meet directly with the people that are being housed there and also the staff.
Right, okay, great, thank you so much. According to Local Law 95 Q4 of 2025 report, there were only 478 LGBTQ plus individuals listed as being served by DHS when a typical day has at least 50,000 adults in shelter. This is only 1% of the shelter population, while by comparison, almost 40% of the clients DYCD serves in their shelter identify as LGBTQ plus. What do you think the reason is for such a low LGBTQ plus population in adult shelters, especially given that many reports have found that LGBTQ plus individuals are more likely to be housing insecure than non-LGBTQ plus individuals?
Yeah, I mean, I frankly think it's the way, of course, that we are required to administer the survey, which happens at intake, is anonymous and not related, connected for lots of very good reasons to anyone's placement or services. And so I think it's just a voluntary, while it's present and available, when people are doing and have all kinds of other issues going on in their lives, filling out a survey is probably not their primary concern. And so I think, I said it in my testimony, I think we acknowledge this well undercounts the people who would identify otherwise in a different manner. And so I think we do, treat the system, though, as if it is more diverse than what we see in that survey, and seek to have the kind of services and supports that will support everyone.
Thank you. And then how is data collected for that report? What sources are used, and how and at what point during intake does DSS ask for people to identify as LGBTQ plus?
So the data for LL95 is based on individuals who meet at least one of the following criteria. They are either in a TGNC designated bed, they are in ACES Place or Marsh's house, or they have self-identified as TGNC.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to kick it back to Chair Farias to ask
Thank
a few
you.
follow-up questions.
Yeah, I just have a couple questions based off of some responses. In terms of the staff trainings that occur, how are you assessing your training efficiency? Is there like a post case management referral? Is it going off of any responses from any of the folks that are experiencing, the case managers on site? What's the assessment look like? If any assessment is done at all.
That's a great question, Chair. Currently, we just track data as it relates to those that are taking the survey. So we have information that relates to the DHS staff that takes the survey, as well as the provider staff that takes the survey. But to your question, we don't have anything specific to track the post-training. So that's a great question.
Yeah, I would encourage us to consider looking at that just because of the population we're serving. We want to make sure that there is a debrief within ourselves about what we're doing. So I would consider that. And then I don't know, I kind of been wrecking my brain here about like the data aggregation, the data collection. I understand to what you stated earlier around the sensitivity with not having to force anyone to identify just because of a potential resource or anything like that. I do think as a city, we should be more of the direct communicator, whether it's with the outreach or the encouragement to get people to be encouraged to identify as soon as we can, because that's like the early, that is the way we can have early prevention or the earliest prevention marker. So whether we're being aggressive or having direct communication, I do think it should be from us, because the worst outcome that could happen is that people still choose to just not, check that box or, self-identify. And I'd rather us not be we want to consider the sensitivity of it and rather just be really, really direct in that communication so we can get people the services that they deserve. And really, like, I think the point I wrote for myself was, like, at the end of the day, bureaucracy really is centered around data aggregation. And whether it's through 301 data that we're aggregating in a local community, or whether it's for, serving our LGBTQ plus neighbors with direct services and resources. I really just want us to think about how we're going to make a generational shift for the next generation with the time that we have in front of us now, through the services we're providing or through the budgetary fights that we're trying to, gain every budget cycle, or through readapting our data aggregation, because it is the point that we use to fund and operate everything in the city. So I just really would appreciate you folks thinking more about that and creating generational shifts.
Yeah, just to comment, and there might be other comments as well. I mean, I agree, and I think just to separate the two things, the survey itself is not related to people's care and accommodations. I'm sure you know that, but I'm certainly open to partnering with folks in the community across this city to think about how we might otherwise, in a safe and effective manner, understand the population that we're serving better, because this is not this is not yielding that kind of information, such that we have to have other information to augment it.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think a part of this, and I sort of mentioned this in my testimony, and sort of assessing current agency data practices and gaps in research that's needed, because ultimately I think in terms of the ideas that I have in advancing rights and resources, I think across the spectrum, it really is heavy in data. I think about, especially when you think about it from a litigation risk and litigation perspective and how we move legislation. But one component I think that certainly needs to be assessed, and is something that I'm trying to make time to do, is looking at our privacy laws. I think with the NYU Langone situation, we've now come to understand sort of the reach the federal government can have, even if it is hopefully will be held unlawful, as it has in 20 other instances, 21 now, I believe. But I think we need to examine the extent that both our state and our city privacy laws the ways in which we can use them to protect the kind of information that we need whenever it's used for a hostile purpose specifically. I think that's well within the powers of the state and within the city, through, well, at least as I understand the law. And so I think that's something that both City Council and I think the mayoral administration would certainly be looking into, and something I've prioritized amongst my ever-growing priority list.
Yeah, I appreciate your responses. Thank you. I'll now pass it over to Councilmember Nurse for questions.
Thank you so much. I just have one question, which might lead to another one, but this is based on an experience I had with a young person who was in a LGBTQ home in the city, undocumented youth. So what happens after, I believe, after he turned 21, he kind of was not able to continue to participate with a lot of services. What happens with undocumented youth who are transitioning out of shelter, who can't get into Nycc or things like that? What kind of programs or pathways are set up so that they can be successful in the city, at least in securing housing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and because of the recent surge in immigrants who came in recently, it's been on our minds a lot. The resources, so we've been expanding the number of shelter beds that are available for residential beds that are available for 21 to 24-year-olds. So that helps prolong the amount of time that people can stay in our services. At DYCD, we also, the state has recently released housing program called the Housing Access Voucher Program that immigrants are eligible for, undocumented individuals are eligible for. So that's something that is available to New Yorkers.
No, thank you for that. This was probably like 2017, 2018. This was before our terrible president right now, or actually after, but it wasn't like this. So I think it's just interesting to see that I'm glad to hear that, but a gap in how are folks going to be able to get set up and work and get a housing if they're by themselves and have been by themselves for a long time.
Council member, I'd like to offer additional supports that are offered through DSS. As you know, we're committed to connecting New Yorkers to stable housing and keeping them stably housed. We do have a rental assistance program called SHARE, Special Housing Assistance Resource. It's funded by the state, and it is specific for individuals or households that are in shelter that can't access the other government subsidies, and so that's available to that population. It is provided irrespective of orientation or expression.
And I just want to add too, as part of, and I think I mentioned this before you came in, as part of the inherited work the Mayor's Office of LGBTQI Affairs has inherited from the Unity Project in collaboration with the Mayor's Office of Immigration Affairs under Local Law 73. We're currently working on our rights and resources specifically for migrant LGBTQI New Yorkers. And so this will be something that we specifically address, and including the ways that we disseminate that information to make sure people are aware of the resources and that we're being proactive about it. I know that the report to council is due in November, I believe, but I think we're trying to get ahead of schedule as we can.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairs.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'd like to shift to HASA. Does HRA know what % of HASA clients also identify as LGBTQIA+.
We don't collect data on sexual orientation, though. We do collect data on transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming status. 5%, about 1,800 or so clients identify as transgender, gender non-conforming, or non-binary.
Sorry, 5% of 1,800, or 5% is equivalent to 18?
Is equivalent to 1,800 or so.
Okay.
Of the total HASA caseload.
Got it. Thank you. Federal funding for HIV services is at risk, including HAPA and the Ryan White HIV program. HASA's housing program uses federal funding from the HAPA program, and there have been recent proposals to eliminate those grants entirely, incorporating this funding into larger block grants. Does HRA have a plan for how it will preserve services for this population should federal funding be limited or discontinued?
Luckily, in the prior year, both programs were at risk and continue to be funded till today, so that's good news. But we're watching the developments in the federal budget closely. Should HOPWA be discontinued, we will work closely with our partners in the city and federal level to ensure our funding needs are being met and to maintain these services. We're really hoping and advocating for that.
Are you flagging this for OMB?
Yes.
Like, so they are aware that should federal funding be eliminated, that they would have to fill in the gap?
Those conversations are ongoing with OMB.
Okay, great, thank you. Local Law 130 of 2021 requires that DSS, quote, complete a review of the services and resources provided to LGBTQI plus individuals entering domestic violence emergency shelters, including but not limited to efforts aimed at data collection about LGBTQI plus individuals utilizing domestic violence emergency shelter, and shall submit to the mayor and the speaker of the city council and post on its website a written report including the following information, end quote. How many people were offered the survey, and what % of those offered the survey responded?
Thank you for the question. I'm Mima Rivera, Deputy Commissioner for HRA's Domestic Violence Services. So we don't track how many people were offered the survey, but I can tell you that for our submission for calendar year 2024, which was submitted in 2025, there were 16,318 responses to the survey. Of those who responded, 16% identified as LGBTQI+. There were 114 DVS respondents, 25% of them, 25% of whom identified as LGBTQI.
I'm sorry, what was that last number?
Sure.
114.
114 DVS respondents, of which 25% identified as LGBTQI. There were 8,906 cash assistance respondents, of which 16% identified as LGBT.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
I'm moving slowly here.
Oh, no problem.
Can you repeat that last number?
Sure. There were 8,906 cash assistance respondents.
Okay. And that percentage was?
16%.
16%. And sorry, the first statistic, 16,318 with 16%, what was that for specifically?
How many respondents?
Total.
How many people, right, in total,
Okay.
responded to the survey?
Okay, cash
There-
assistance was the last one?
There's a couple more. There
Okay.
was 915 ID NYC respondents. That's 915, of which 18% identified as LGBTQI, and 6,383 SNAP respondents, of which 15% identified as LGBTQI.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was for calendar year 2024.
Right, that was
If-
submitted in 2025. We're in the
Do you
process.
have calendar year
of-
2025?
We're in the process of gathering that information.
Okay, it would be great if you could follow up with
Sure,
us
and I-
whenever you have
and I
that.
will.
When do you usually have that available?
Actually, they just reached out to my office a couple of weeks ago. So
Okay.
it's due in August, but
Got
they,
it.
they tapped my shoulder and
Okay.
asked that I start gathering.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And can you just share how personal information is protected among these respondents?
So this information is voluntary, it's kept confidential, it's anonymous. So this information is not shared.
Okay. Do any respondents express concern about completing the survey in relation to retaliation or data privacy? And if so, how do you manage those concerns?
I'm not aware of anyone who has elevated any concerns regarding the survey, but I would imagine that if there were concerns, we would again emphasize that these responses are confidential, they're anonymous, and that they serve to guide and inform our work.
Thank you. And for the calendar year 2022 report, HRA reported that in calendar year 2022, DVS did not receive any inquiries or complaints regarding domestic violence emergency shelter services provided to residents who identified as LGBTQIA+. This includes any inquiries or complaints forwarded via the Intranet Quorum, our IQ system. Do you know how many complaints regarding DV emergency shelters did DHS receive during this period in general?
At this time, our program I can't give an accurate count of the emergency shelter complaints in 2022
Okay.
through our IQ system, but I do also want to note that our shelters are overseen by OCFS. They receive operating certificates, and OCFS regulates our shelters. And if there are any complaints, the residents usually submit those complaints directly to OCFS, and HRA, serving as the local social service district, does not have we're not privy to what these complaints are unless the client signs consent for us to know of them.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Can you just assess or opine on whether or not you think the lack of complaints is because there were no concerns from LGBTQI plus identified residents, or because complainants choose not to self-identify?
I can't say one way or another, but I can say that I think that it's so important for us to kind of message the importance of disclosure. It's and also emphasize that it's voluntary, and we understand it's deeply personal. But the goal is really, although we don't want to pressure self-disclosure, I think there are ways in which we can encourage self-disclosure. I think the way we ask clients to identify is very important. I think we need to also, for instance, with our DV providers, that when a client comes to a DV shelter, they're in a moment of crisis. They may not be of the mindset to share that information. So perhaps it would be best to obtain this information once we build trust, and to come back and enter that information in our database so that we can have that information. So I understand why the numbers are so low at time of intake, but I think we just need to encourage that we build trust and let clients know why this information is needed, ask it in a way where it's welcomed and to receive, and make sure that it's documented in our systems, data systems.
Thank you. I think that concludes our question section, but I do want to just note before I turn it back over to Chair Farias, I know that you all are all willing partners in this work, and I just want to encourage you to continue to be proactive in how we're assessing and addressing and serving the needs of all of our unique populations in the shelter system, but particularly the LGBTQIA plus TGNC populations. It seems like there's great collaboration across the board and through all of the agencies, and so I hope that work continues. And thank you all for your testimonies today. Thank you.
Yeah, we're super appreciative of all of you showing up and answering all of our questions, and obviously want to remain active partners with you. We're all trying to consistently remain proactive versus reactive, especially in government. So thank you all again. And this portion of the hearing, you all are free to go.
Well, it would be nice if you stick around and listen to some of the public testimony.
We are now going to open the hearing for public testimony. As folks are leaving the dais, I would like to remind members of the public that this is a government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. Members of the public shall remain silent unless called upon to testify. All testimony must be relevant to today's hearing on housing instability among LGBTQ plus individuals in New York City. I'm going to repeat that. All testimony must be relevant to today's hearing on housing instability among LGBTQ individuals in New York City. If remarks stray from the subject matter, speakers will be reminded of the topic and asked to refocus their comments. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant at Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing and you have not done so, please fill out an appearance slip with the Sergeant at Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's oversight topic and/or legislation. Friendly reminder, you can submit a longer testimony, but you are reserved to just 2 minutes. We read all testimony that is submitted. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. I will now call the first panel. I'd like to call Alex Guevara, Reddy Chatnia Gujarati, and Nedelin Helena Diaz to the dais. Apologies for any mispronunciations. One more time, Alex Guevara, Reddy Chatnia Gujarati, and Nedelin Helena Diaz. Perfect. Alex, you can begin. You have to click the button on the mic and it'll light up for you.
Oh, got you.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Guevara, and I'm a youth advocate at the Ali Fournier Center. I'm speaking as a queer and trans person who is living through what many LGBTQ plus young people have experienced. For LGBTQ youth, homelessness is so much deeper than not having a place to sleep. It's about rejection, instability, and survival. This is also the case for me, as family rejection caused me to need RHY services. These experiences caused a lot of pain, and I could not work on healing while waiting for a steady place to stay. I arrived at AFC last summer at 21 years old. I stayed overnight at the drop-in center and on the streets for 3 weeks. The drop-in center was not comfortable since they are no longer allowed to have beds, so I had to sleep in chairs or on top of a table. My case manager then referred me to Marsha's house, a DHS shelter, and I stayed there for 2 weeks. Marsha's felt more like a prison. We were yelled at by staff while going about our daily activities, and we were dead named. It was made clear that we were just another case to solve. But we're not just that. We're people with trauma, but most importantly, with stories that deserve to be respected and heard. If they hired LGBTQ staff, it would have been a much better environment. Thanks to the city funding of 100 new beds for 21 to 24-year-olds, AFC was able to open up a new emergency housing site. Without that site opening, I easily could have been on the wait list for up to 6 months instead of a month. Today, I live in AFC's transitional housing program, and I'm looking into rapid rehousing or supportive housing as my next step. But the options are extremely limited, and the supportive housing process will take at least another year. If youth had access to vouchers, I could have easily moved out on my own sooner. To end, I just want to say we as queer youth deserve a housing program that feels like home, where we can find community and where we can feel comfortable with welcoming staff and peers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to testify today. My name is Chaitanya Gunrati, and I'm a member of the Youth Action Board of New York City. The Youth Action Board is made up of young people with lived experience of homelessness. Our goal is to help shape programs, policies that affect runaway and homeless youth in New York City, and to ensure that their voices are heard. I'm here today because I know firsthand how difficult it is to navigate housing instability as a young person. When you do not know where you're going to sleep at night, everything becomes harder, like finding a job, continuing your education, taking care of your health, and so on. Throughout my work with the YAB, I have learned that LGBTQIA plus youth face some of the highest risks of homelessness. While they represent estimated 5 to 10% of overall youth population, they make up as much as 40% of youth experiencing homelessness. Many are pushed out by family rejection, discrimination, unsafe home environments, etc. Despite this disproportionate need, resources and funding have not kept pace, leaving many young people without access to stable and affirming support. For LGBTQIA plus immigrant youth, these challenges are often even more severe. Many come from countries where they face discrimination, persecution, or criminalization because of their identity. After arriving in the United States, they often encounter additional barriers to housing, legal services, healthcare, and community support. However, there is no dedicated city funding stream specifically focused on the LGBTQI plus immigrant communities, leaving some of our most vulnerable youth without targeted affirming services. This is why I support expanding housing options for LGBTQIA plus youth and increasing funding for organizations that provide affirming services. I urge the Council to expand LGBTQIA plus youth housing, increase investment in affirming services, and establish the proposed $15 million LGBTQIA plus immigration fund. No young person should have to face homelessness alone because of their identity or immigration status. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Click your microphone. Yep.
Good morning, but it's not morning. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Council. My name is Nedeling Helena Diaz, and I am the co-chair of the New York City YAB Youth Action Board and an outreach specialist with Housing Works LGBTQ plus IA housing assistance program. Through my work with Housing Works, I connect LGBTQ individuals experiencing homelessness or housing instability with housing resource, supportive services, and pathways to stability. In my outreach, I've met many young people who have been rejected by their families, forced to leave their homes, or left without a safe place to go simply because of who they are. I have worked with youth sleeping on friends' couch, cycling through shelters, or trying to survive without any support system. The emotional toll of rejection, discrimination, and housing instability is something no young person should have to endure. Unfortunately, these stories are far too common. According to the research from the Trevor Project, 28% of LGBTQ youth have experienced homelessness or housing instability. Among youth who were kicked out of their homes, 40% said it was because of their LGBTQ identity. More than half of those who ran away reported doing so because of mistreatment or fear of mistreatment related to their identity. These experiences have lasting consequences. LGBTQ youth experiencing homelessness or housing instability were found to have 2 to 4 times greater odds of reporting depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicide attempts compared to those with stable housing. That is why I support the coalition's call for a $15 million LGBTQ IA plus immigration fund. Many LGBTQ IA plus immigrants face compounded barriers included housing instability, legal insecurity, language barriers, and difficulty accessing affirming services. I also support the 10 million supports for persons involved in the sex trade. Housing is more than shelter. It is safety, opportunity, and hope. I urge the council to continue investing in solutions that ensure every New Yorker has access to safe and stable housing. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, folks, for coming in to testify today. You are now excused from the dais. Thank you so much. We have no questions. I would like to call up the following folks to testify. I'm trying my best to read these cards, folks. Asher Blachaney, Blockney. I can't see the last couple letters. Apologies. Brian J. Ellicott Cook, Nadia Swanson, Eva Jacro, and Ethan Lowe. Is there an Asher present? Thank you. Is there an Asher on the dais? Okay, so Brian, you can begin.
Good afternoon, chairs, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on housing instability among LGBTQ plus New Yorkers, particularly LGBTQ plus older adults. My name is Brian Ellicott Cook, and I serve as the Director of Government Relations at SAGE. SAGE is the country's oldest and largest organization dedicated to improving the lives of LGBTQ plus older adults. Here in New York City, we provide housing, supportive services, and community-based program to thousands of older adults each year, including through our LGBTQ plus affirming housing developments like Stonewall House in Brooklyn and Crotona Pride House in the Bronx. And yet, LGBT New Yorkers are far more likely to experience housing instability. Nationally, approximately 40% of LGBTQ plus older adults live below the poverty line, and fewer than half, just 49%, own their own homes, compared to 65% of the general population. These disparities are driven by a lifetime of discrimination in employment, housing, and access to benefits, combined with higher rates of social isolation and the greater likelihood of aging without traditional family support. Here in New York City, broader homelessness crises among older adults underscore the urgency of these challenges. The number of individuals aged 55 and older in the shelter system has increased approximately 250% between 2004 and 2017, with those aged 65 increasing more than 300%. Without intervention, that population is projected to continue to grow significantly in the coming years within the already vulnerable group of LGBTQ plus older adults who face greater risks of housing insecurity, discrimination, and unsafe placement. At this time, there are very limited affirming housing options available, while New York City has allowed us to make those developments at Stonewall House in Brooklyn and Crotona in the Bronx. The total supply of affirming housing for LGBT older adults remains extremely limited and very much needed. However, HUD's recent proposal to eliminate the access rule threatens to reverse all of this progress, and we must be prepared to fight for that. As this committee examines housing insecurity among LGBT plus individuals, there is one thing I want to recommend. The agency's idea of safety signals for more people to self-identify in those first moments to an ally or a community member would make all the difference. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Nadia Swanson, pronouns they, them. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Global Programs at the Ali Forney Center. Tonight, hundreds of LGBT 16 to 24-year-olds will sleep on the streets or in drop-in center chairs, waiting 6 months for a crisis bed after escaping unfathomable levels of abuse. Without stability, they're at further risk for criminalization, sexual violence, decompensating mental and physical health, substance misuse, and profound developmental harm. 90% of AFC's youth are BIPOC and come from low-income households. 20% of the youth at Rikers are LGBT. And since 2020, we have grieved 25 deaths. And those are just the ones we know of. LGBT unhoused youth die at more than double the rates of their peers. These connections are not coincidental. We serve over 2,000 youth a year. We have 400 on a wait list for a bed, and last year that number was 300. When youth had access to vouchers, it was under 100, and youth moved into stable housing with an increase by 350%. Now there are none, and there's a bottleneck. Statewide, RHY rose more than 70% in a single year. The funding structure guarantees failure. DYCD pays $50K per bed per year. The real cost is $80K. That gap has real human consequences. The state and city exec cut RHY funding. The mayor's housing plan did not include any housing youth can access through DYCD, and HUD proposed gutting the equal access rule. The shameful thing is this is fixable, and it's not expensive. We've been telling you what works. Youth homelessness can be rare, brief, non-recurring, and safe. We need the city to raise the RHY beds to $80K, fund LGBT youth mental health beds, increase crisis beds to eliminate wait lists. We need more funding for case management and therapy, restore DYCD voucher access and expand supportive housing, baseline the $5 million speaker initiative, fund $15 million for LGBT immigrant legal services. Youth homelessness is a choice. New York City cannot call itself safe for LGBT youth, while 400 of them are decompensated on a wait list. I'm tired of begging for the government to show it cares with action. This should be top priority. You can be the administration that eliminates wait lists. Thank you. And I have a lot more I can say, as you know, so if you have questions, let me know.
Thank you, and please submit anything additional that is helpful to your testimony.
Hello, my name is Ava Jakru. I'm a case manager at one of New York City's safe havens, facilities that serve as a last resort safety net for our most vulnerable neighbors, including LGBTQ plus youth. Every day I work alongside New Yorkers who are ready to leave shelter behind and rebuild their lives in permanent housing. But I am here today because my colleagues and I across the city are hitting a wall, an administrative catch-22 that leaves thousands of people trapped in homelessness for no reason other than a missing piece of plastic. Here is the problem in its simplest form. ID NYC requires a photo ID to get a photo ID. Among my clients that are affected by this barrier, 100% of my queer clients are among this group. For someone with a stable home and a file drawer full of documents, this makes sense. But for populations we serve in safe havens, runaway and homeless youth, survivor of domestic violence, immigrants fleeing danger, people whose belongings have been swept away or destroyed, and individuals living with severe mental illness, this requirement is an impossible barrier. These are New Yorkers who have never had an ID or who have had their documents stolen, withheld as a tool of abuse, or discarded during a street sweep. Without a government-issued photo ID, they cannot apply for the very programs designed to lift them out of homelessness, the 2010 supportive housing, HRA benefits, public assistance, city FEPS, or SODA. Currently, ID NYC does allow certain caretakers to vouch for a client's identity in lieu of a photo ID. But the list of eligible agencies is narrow, and in what I believe to be a profound oversight, it does not include the Department of Homeless Services. We are the very agency charged with housing this population, yet we are locked out of the process that could unblock their path to housing. ID NYC currently accepts vouchers only from the NYS Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, the NYS Department of Health, the NYS Office of Mental Health, and the NYC Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. DHS Safe Havens, which serve as a catch-all for New York's most marginalized residents, are absent from this list. What I propose is that we add DHS to the caretaker list, allow DHS case managers who have established ongoing relationships with their clients and access to verified case records to waive the photo requirement for ID NYC. This simple change would immediately unblock housing for thousands of shelter clients. We are already carrying the trust and documentation to vouch for our clients' identities. We simply need the city to recognize that authority.
Thank you. You can begin when ready.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Ethan Lowe, pronouns he, him, and I'm a staff attorney with the Legal Aid Society's LGBTQ Law and Policy Unit. Based on Legal Aid's work in representing New Yorkers experiencing housing instability, we offer several recommendations to improve access to safe and affirming shelter. Shelter is often the first step towards stable housing, but many LGBTQ individuals, especially transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary New Yorkers, avoid or leave shelters because they do not feel safe. We commend the city for opening ACES Place, the first transitional housing program for TGNC and BI New Yorkers. However, Legal Aid continues to hear from TGNC and BI clients who struggle to access affirming placements. The city should continue expanding affirming shelter capacity across all boroughs so that every TGNC and BI New Yorkers can access safer shelter when they need it. We also urge the city to increase awareness of existing rights and resources. Many TGNC and BI individuals do not know that they can request placements in affirming shelters and TGNC units or request accommodations related to their gender identity and medical needs. We routinely hear from clients who remain in unsafe placements simply because they are unaware that safer options existed. The city shelters should have clear multilingual notices of rights and have more proactive outreach at intake and throughout a client's shelter stay. Some clients hesitate to disclose their identities without understanding its purpose and knowing about the placements available. Finally, the city should expand the capacity of DSS LGBTQ affairs and ongoing comprehensive LGBTQ training for shelter staff. Legal Aid continues to receive reports from LGBTQ clients, especially TGNC and BI clients, who experience problems even in DHS shelters designated as affirming because some staff lack sufficient understanding of TGNC and BI identities and needs. Additional and improved training would help ensure LGBTQ New Yorkers can safely remain connected to shelter and housing services. DSS LGBTQ Affairs has been a valuable resource for LGBTQ clients in DHS shelters, but its limited capacity delays responses to urgent needs. We recommend dedicating resources to expanding DSS LGBTQ Affairs and creating additional LGBTQ liaison positions throughout the shelter system. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Nadia, you mentioned, capacity in your testimony. Can you just speak a little bit more about the issues around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we serve over 2,000 youth a year. That's between our 24-hour drop-in center and our housing. We have 212 beds that are a mix of emergency and transitional. We currently, as of today, have 400 youth on a wait list for that crisis bed. When youth had access to vouchers, there was a period of about 4 years where youth had access, whether it be the FEPS pilots or through EHV, where we got below 100. We're in this bottleneck. Youth can't get in because youth aren't moving out.
And sorry, you said, can you just repeat the numbers again?
2,000 youth a year, 400 on a wait list today, 300 on our wait list last year, and 100 when we had access to vouchers. Yeah. On that same note, I was writing a lot of notes during their questioning. During Councilmember Nurse's question, I think it was an important note that, and I'm glad she said the years. So over 10 years ago, we were fighting with Lou Fidler to raise the age that DYCD would fund beds for 21 to 24-year-olds. It didn't pass until 2018, so that's also leads to what that question was with Councilmember Nurse. We had 40 open beds, 60 kind of, up until last year when we got that extra 100. AFC took on 45 of those new beds. 20 were of the ones that Alex spoke about. Other RHY programs have been hesitant and didn't take on the beds that we know we need because the bed rate is so low, we can't afford to take them on. And so this is like the biggest sort of crux of it all. And there's been this push to, fund housing navigators and all of this, which is wonderful. We need that, but there's nowhere to navigate them to. And so we need more resources of people to have a crisis bed in that moment, right? Because they're only going to decompensate sitting on that wait list and in that drop-in center. And then also being able to move people on to something that's stable and supportive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks. We'll now move on to the next round. We appreciate your testimony. I'd like to call up, I have Pamela Farcour, Henry Love, Timothy Pena, David Miranda, and Mateo Guerrero. Anyone can begin when ready. You can begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Pena. I'm a service-connected Navy veteran with PTSD. I'm also a former resident of Borden Avenue Veterans Residence, which is a veterans program, transitional program in Long Island City. I resided at Borden Avenue Veterans Residence in 2022 while participating in New York City's homeless services system and pursuing permanent housing. During my time at Borden, I observed frequent ambulance and police activity Residents regularly discuss concerns involving safety, mental health issues, substance abuse, and living conditions within the facility. I was concerned. So I spent 5 months at Borden Avenue. I'm in supportive housing now. Been there for about 3.5 years. And my concerns are the conditions in the shelters, especially for veterans in the VA system. And I did it in a FOIA that I did with Borden Avenue. This is the only program that we have available to us for us that are in the VA system. In a 16-month period of time, 24 to 25, there were 1,365 emergency calls, one every 9 hours. This is also at considerable cost to the city, somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 per person per year.
I appreciate you coming in to give both of our committees your testimony and the facts here. I read through and understand that you are raising it here today because you want more folks to be aware, and the other committees have not, as in your words, taken the allegation seriously. We will make sure to raise it to the commissioner and to raise it to our Veterans Committee chair as well. But I just wanted to state, I understand why you're here today giving us this testimony, and we'll make sure to raise it to the appropriate folks.
I do want to just thank you for that. It's not easy being HIV positive as a veteran in a program, in a shelter like that. It doesn't take much. I was pretty terrified for the 5 months that I was at Borden.
Yeah.
New York City is an incredible city, but that was my introduction to New York City. And it's the introduction that a lot of us are getting. And it's not fair. It's not fair to New York. It's not fair to New Yorkers to have a situation like that. And I watched lots of, I've watched veterans die of overdose. And this is the same as happening in a VA hospital. So those are the same type of applications that are supposed to apply. So thank you very much for hearing my testimony.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello. I'm a child of Stonewall, a child of Marcia and Sylvia. My name is Dr. Henry Love, and many of you know me from my time at WIN, Women in Need, but today I'm here for something a little different. I now lead the Targeted Housing Instances program at Point Source Youth, a national organization focused on ending LGBT youth homelessness. As a queer Black man and a person living with HIV and unfathomable trauma, I've done the decorum, I have done the degrees, I've done the politeness. Today I'm going to be real. I'm going to apologize if it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but that's the point. I'm here as living proof of what happens when support arrives on time. This testimony is for the ones who did not have that opportunity. Earlier, the young people spoke about the data and the stats, the deaths. And in our community, we have a saying, we survived Atlanta. It marks who made it, and it memorializes those of us who didn't make it. Cordell Fowler is my best friend. In 2016, his funeral was in Detroit. He was the it girl of Atlanta, magnetic, brilliant. And in our last conversation at the Aloft Hotel in Harlem, he spoke about how he wanted to move here and be a part of this city. He was surviving through sex work, begging for help, and was turned away. And he ultimately died in 2016 in a drug-related accident. But don't call it a drug-related accident. It was related to housing instability, and that's ultimately what led to his death. In 2017, Devon Wade passed away, and his funeral was in Houston. Devon was my partner, my soulmate, my safe place in an unsafe world. He was from the Deep South, and he made it out to Columbia University. 1 month from completing his PhD he was taken too soon from us. When I found out about Cordell's death, Devon carried me, and weeks later when I received my HIV diagnosis, Devon carried me. And then he was gone. Sorry, I'm almost done. He was killed by someone who was housing unstable, untreated, and 1 month from that finish line. Frank in Arkansas, James in Virginia, Jeremy Delano from Detroit, people I saw every Thursday at Trappy Hour in Harlem. I made it out, but so many didn't. So why TAP? Why the Targeting Housing Assistance Program? LGBT youth, as we earlier mentioned, are 40% of the homeless youth and only 9% of the population. Housing instability raises suicide attempts by 3.7 times, and up to 20% of homeless youth in NYC are living with HIV. They can't maintain HIV treatment, they can't stay connected to care, and TAP creates the stability that makes survival possible. TAP is simple. 98% of those who participate in the TAP program, which on average gives about $3,700 in direct cash to young people within 48 hours to stabilize them. 98% of them, of recipients at Henry Street and at the door, had no shelter contact in 6 months, per our evaluation at Johns Hopkins University. So, in light of the time, I asked that Cordell and Devon's obituaries are here on the table as just proof of what happens to young people who don't make it. Neither of them made it past 30. $4.7 million is being asked by the City Council to fund TAP, the Targeted Housing Assistance Program. It's imperative that we do this now and to show that we are fully human. And in the end of that, I want to show you just this tattoo. As I was doing this, I thought about it. Devon had this same tattoo here, and it says empathy, and that's what his dissertation was about. And I ask that as you are in these final conversations on the budget, that you think about all the young people and you think about Devon, you think about Cordell, who didn't make it past 30 because they didn't have someone to intervene. They didn't have policy to intervene for them in time. I stop there.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Miranda, and I'm an attorney with the LGBTQ plus and HIV advocacy project at Manhattan Legal Services, which is part of Legal Services NYC. We have offices in all 5 boroughs, a dedicated team of advocates providing services specific to LGBTQIA folks, many of whom experience housing instability, poverty, and discrimination. New York City's housing affordability crisis affects residents across the city, but LGBTQIA plus New Yorkers often face additional barriers that exacerbate housing insecurity, including pervasive discrimination, limited access to affirming housing and shelter environments, and administrative obstacles within public benefits systems. Today, I will discuss the HIV/AIDS Services Administration, known as HASA, for case management and rental assistance, the homeless crisis among LGBTQIA plus youth, and the failure of demographic data to capture the severity of this crisis. I'm going to start by talking about HASA, and I do think that there are several issues within the HASA program, which is operated by HRA. We have seen that housing opportunities are often lost due to administrative delays within the HASA program. And there is also a severe lack of transparency, which means that clients either lose housing or are unable to get the housing that they deserve. And by way of example, I'm gonna talk about a client who we shall call Miss W. Miss W is from the Bronx, and she had been trying to get a HASA housing voucher for 5 years. She identifies as a lesbian, and she reached out to us because she could not handle another denial. During those 5 years, from her time of her application to the time when we finally were able to resolve the issue, she and her adult daughter, who suffers from severe autism, were forced into the shelter system. Nobody ever told Ms. W at HASA that the issue was that the rent was too low, even though she had found 3 apartments within New York City NYC Connect. And every time she would get rejected because the rent was too low. So her and her daughter would go from shelter to shelter and couch to couch. And that is a fundamental failure within a system that we can actually fix. Moving on to the youth shelter, I would not, to youth homelessness, I would not, a conversation about housing instability within this community would not be complete if we did not talk about youth homelessness. Without familiar support, the city must provide additional support to ensure that youth are valued, supported, and have the opportunity to create a better life for themselves. Additionally, LGBTQIA youth are disproportionately represented in the foster care system, with more than 1/3 of youth identifying as LGBTQIA, and then there aren't systems in place to ensure that they can go into stable housing. Instead, there's a foster care to homelessness pipeline. And on to the final topic, New York City's demographic data collection creates a hidden homelessness crisis. There are many more people who are LGBTQIA plus who do not have stable housing, who are not in shelter. And if we're only counting by who's in shelter, then we're missing those folks who are out there couch surfing or sleeping on the train or going from friend to friend or in houses, right? Like in sort of those less traditional where there might be some more stability that could be provided. So we do have to figure out ways to measure that data. I think it could be done. It's going to take a lot of street walking, literally, like walking on the street and hitting that pavement and talking to community members. And I think that's important. And just to wrap up, I just want to thank the council for your attention to this issue. I urge the council to ensure that the agencies serving LGBTQIA New Yorkers, including HRA, DHS, and DYCD, fulfill their mission of providing safe, affirming, and equitable services. Pride must be more than a celebration. It must be reflected in policies and programs that protect the housing stability, health, and dignity of LGBTQIA plus New Yorkers. And again, this hearing speaks volumes to that at least we're somewhat on the way there. So I thank you for that, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Chair Hudson and Chair Farias, for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Mateo Guerrero. I work at Make the Road New York. I'm the Trans Justice and Leadership Program Manager. And I'm also trans myself and a migrant myself, and I get to work with those communities who are at the intersection of police harassment, housing instability, employment discrimination, immigration processes, etc. I want to share 3 stories before I name my demands, my asks. The first story, this is one that we hear very common. One of our members, who I'm going to refer to as E, she's a trans woman, a migrant trans woman, and her partner K, queer migrant men. They were assaulted at a shelter by other people housed at the same facility based on their gender identity and their sexual orientation. The staff at the shelter, instead of providing support to intervene or providing support to de-escalate, they called the police on everybody involved. When the police arrived, they did not provide access to interpretation, and they ultimately arrested K. This case was dismissed in court, but it could have resulted in immigration complications for K as he was adjusting his immigration status. In this case, we see multiple systemic failures occurring at once. One, the discrimination based on gender identity and sexual orientation, the denial of language access by police, as well as police interaction that can exacerbate complications for their immigration status. The second story is M, someone who we love very deeply in our community. She is one of our trans migrant elders. M, she was very tired of waiting for Section 8 voucher or any other housing subsidy from the city. And she came to believe that the only way to accessing stable housing was becoming HIV positive. M has been doing sex work for more than 4 decades. And as someone who is aging in the industry, she found herself without a reliable source of income. And so she felt that this was the only pathway to prevent herself from being unhoused again. And I'm also going to share the story of F. He was illegally locked out of their basement apartment just 2 weeks ago. This was on June 11th. F landlord has been denying them the access, the opportunity to bring friends over, even though this was a separate unit. They were denying them of a lease, denying them of proof of payment of rent, denying them of receiving letters or any proof of residence in their home. And they have been harassed because of their sexual orientation and gender identity. On June 11th is when the landlord decided to lock F out of the basement apartment. And the police helped the landlord without giving an opportunity to F to be able to share what had happened and that they actually live in that apartment. They deny access to interpretation. And by the way, this was the 102nd precinct. And they changed the locks. Since then, F has been couch surfing until this resolves in court. But they are terrified of going into a city shelter. They were housed at a male shelter in the past and was very harassed, and so they don't want to return there. And these are stories that are not unique for our communities. We hear this very often in our Transmigrant project. We know that there is a housing crisis in New York City, but for trans and queer migrant New Yorkers, this is a crisis that is compounded by multiple systems of discrimination that include exposure to violence, instability, criminalization, and displacement. And so the two asks that I want to make is one, I want to ask the council to continue to put pressure on the Mamdani administration to end the lawsuit against the 2023-20 City FEPS expansion. That expansion is so important for our communities to be able to have access to these vouchers, to have access to this program, and also that is regardless of immigration status, which is so important for our trans and queer migrants. And the second one is to increase funding through the budget process. So at the state level, we passed the Housing Access Voucher Program, but I also believe that it's the city duty to expand that program and to allocate budget for that program as well. The 900 vouchers that were allocated in New York City are simply not enough when there are around 100,000 people who are facing homelessness and 3 million people who are rent burdened and are in danger of losing their home. And this program is intended to support people who are unhoused as well as people who are at risk of losing their housing. And lastly, I want to name that as Make the Road, we also deeply support all the budget demands of the New York City Trans and Queer Coalition, 15 million for gender affirming care for youth, 10 million for Trans Equity Initiative Fund, 10 million for support persons involved in the sex trades, and 15 million for LGBTQ Immigrant Fund, because when we think about housing instability, is also all these other areas that provide support for our folks. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, folks, for testifying. We don't have any questions, so this panel is now excused. I will move to virtual testimony. We have 3, 4. We have 4 folks for virtual testimony. I'm going to begin with Ateem Aton and Erica Lashbo. Ateem, if you are available to unmute yourself, you may begin when ready.
You may begin.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairs Hudson and Farias. Thank you for chairing this hearing. My name is Atam Tone. I am the Nurse Care Manager for HIV and Gender Affirming Care at Project Renewal. For over 55 years, we have provided comprehensive shelter, healthcare, and employment services to New Yorkers experiencing homelessness. We are deeply grateful to the City Council for its continued commitment to addressing housing instability, particularly among LGBTQIA+ individuals. Project Renewal operates Marcia's House in the Bronx, New York City's first shelter tailored specifically for LGBTQIA+ young adults aged 18 to 35. These young people need far more than just a bed. Many have faced severe family rejection, trauma, and systemic discrimination. Traditional shelter environments can often create additional fear and vulnerability if the care provided is not explicitly affirming and responsive to their needs. Marcia's House offers 81 beds and provides crucial coordinated support, including primary health care, mental health services, occupational therapy, and job readiness programs. Our holistic approach delivers tangible results. In fiscal year 26, we successfully placed 28 residents into permanent long-term housing, exceeding our annual targets. We also know that true housing stability requires addressing trauma and access to health simultaneously. Thanks to the New York City Council, the LGBTQIA+ Community Services Initiative provides critical support for our gender affirming primary and behavioral health care to homeless trans and GNC New Yorkers in NYC. As the Council considers housing instability among LGBTQIA New Yorkers, we urge continued investments in shelter and housing models that are designed with LGBTQIA communities in mind.
Thank you. Your
That
time
means-
expired.
Thank you. Thank you for your partnership.
Thank you so much. I'll now call on Erica Larshbow.
You may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Lorschbaugh. Any pronouns are fine. And thanks for the opportunity to speak about drivers of housing instability in the intersex community in New York. I'm a queer, genderqueer, and intersex New Yorker and the executive director of Interact Advocates for Intersex Youth, the nation's largest intersex advocacy organization. Intersex is an umbrella term for people with innate variations in our sex characteristics, such as chromosomes, hormones, and internal or external anatomy. We don't have city-specific data on housing insecurity to share as a gravely understudied population, but intersex people face the same socioeconomic challenges as others in the community due to inequitable treatment. Over 6 years of nationwide surveys, intersex people tend to report higher rates of discrimination than other LGBTQ people, and more than triple the rate of people without intersex traits. One study found intersex people more than 4 times as likely to require housing assistance as other LGBTQ community members. In a recent study, a quarter of intersex people reported housing discrimination in the prior year, compared with 10% of LGBTQ people and just 4% of all non-intersex respondents. Intersex people also report high levels of employment discrimination and are more likely than other community members to have children and to be physically disabled. Limited access to larger apartments and ADA-compliant housing are more likely to be compounding factors in housing instability for our community as well. To the extent that inequitable treatment of intersex people drives housing instability, the Council does have an opportunity to take action. Councilmember Caban's bill, Intro 131, would make anti-discrimination protections for intersex people explicit on the face of the city human rights law. Just as Director Taylor Brown stated earlier today, making these protections plain will help intersex New Yorkers understand their rights and enforce them, and underscore the importance for employers and housing providers as well. For a community that disproportionately experiences discrimination, clarity in the law can make a real difference, especially given that the intersex community is often overlooked when considering the broader LGBTQ community. We urge the Council to hear and pass Intro 131. Thanks for your time and consideration, and I'll do my best to answer any questions. Always feel free to follow up with us at Interact.
Thank you.
I'll now call on Peyton Moody.
You may begin.
I will now call on Ramona Ferreira.
You may begin.
Seeing no others, both here in person or virtual, looking to testify, we will now close the public portion for testimony, and this hearing is now adjourned.